the field goal. It'll be Jason Gingell out of the hole to Mesco. Good snap, good hold, and the kick is blocked. Appalachian State has stunned the college football world. One of the greatest upsets in sports history.
Live from Chatterbox Sports Studios, it's Off the Bench with Thom Brennaman.
Well, good morning, and a good Monday morning, and a happy New Year to everybody. I'm hoping to be back in the studio with all of you on Wednesday. Before we go any further, let me say good morning to the dynamic duo, if not trio, Casey McAllister, Paul Fritzner, the Dunce, Brandon Seho. I mean, look at you two guys. Front runners all the way. Casey with a Bengals sweatshirt on. Paul, put that down. You have no right to be holding the sweatshirt. There were people that went crazy on the internet about you wearing that sweatshirt while picking TCU to lose the game.
I did. And I said, Tom, if TCU won, I'd be wearing this all week, and I brought it in. It'll be right here all week this week. Horned Frogs, baby. Sonny Dykes.
Horned Frogs. Sonny Dykes, leader of men. We'll get to them in a minute. But look, we come your way Monday through Friday. It's Off the Bench with Thom Brennaman, presented by United Dairy Farmers, 10 Eastern to noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You can find us right here on YouTube/Chatterbox Sports. We always ask you, please subscribe to the show. We also stream on Facebook Live each and every day. Just search Chatterbox Sports, and we will be there. As always, if you prefer to just download us in podcast form, that's great. Just search Off the Bench with Thom Brennaman, and you're dialed in. Well, look, it's a talk of the town, right? It's a talk of the NFL. The Bengals and the Bills set to tee it up tonight, 8:30 at Paycor Stadium. Now, we know for sure, barring a disaster next week, but the number 2 seed in the AFC playoffs, number 2 seed, is definitely on the line. And depending on what happens with Kansas City next week against the Raiders, it could be for the number 1 overall seed. The Chiefs almost, keyword being almost, got beat yesterday, rallying to knock off Denver 27-24. We know the 4 seed will come down to this weekend's clash between the Jaguars and the Titans in Jacksonville. The winner takes the AFC South. Loser is out. Here's where it gets really interesting. Baltimore and Pittsburgh play last night. Pittsburgh takes a 16-13 slug-em-out win. And don't look now, but the men of aluminum are turning into the men of steel. They're now 8-8 with a shot at the playoffs. They would need to win next week and hope that both New England and Miami lose for the Steelers to get in. We'll get back to them in a minute. As for Baltimore, the Bengals have to win or tie one more game and they're division champs. But get this, the Ravens now have slipped to the 6th seed behind the Chargers in the AFC. So if the season ended today, right, we know the Bengals and Ravens are playing next Sunday. They would play the next weekend again in the first round of the playoffs. Oh, and by the way, if the Bengals get the 2 seed, there is a chance they could play the Steelers at home in the first game of the playoffs. There's a lot going on here. Now, ahead of the Steelers, theoretically, you have the Patriots. They take on Miami, and the Patriots fully control their playoff destiny. If New England beats Buffalo this coming weekend, they're in the final wild card spot. Doesn't matter what the Steelers, doesn't matter what Miami does. Now, if Miami wins at home against the Jets, New England loses, Miami is in. So as I mentioned, Steelers only get in if both New England and Miami lose this weekend. Of course, the Steelers have to win. Elsewhere, the Giants clinched a playoff spot with a win over Indy. The Buccaneers, how do you explain Tom Brady? At 45 years old, he owns every record there is known to man, and now he has set yet another one. Fifth straight game with 30 or more completions. He throws 3 touchdown passes, runs for another, fires for 440 yards in the game. The Buccaneers nail down the NFC South. The Eagles, for the second straight week, had a chance to nail down the number 1 seed, home field throughout the playoffs. But the second straight week, they go without Jalen Hurts. They lose. So get this drama now, okay? The Eagles play the Giants next week. Hurts is expected back. If Philadelphia loses that game, and that's a real possibility, Giants are pretty good. They're already in the playoffs. If they lose that game and Dallas wins, the Cowboys would clinch the NFC East and perhaps the number 1 seed. Now, the Niners have won 9 in a row. They get the overtime win over the Raiders yesterday. San Francisco still has a shot at the number 1 overall seed in the NFC. Then you get to Green Bay. Once 4-8, talking about benching Aaron Rodgers, all of a sudden the Packers have won 4 in a row. They demolished Minnesota. That was embarrassing if you're a Vikings fan. It was embarrassing. If the Packers win next week, they are in the playoffs. The Pack, Seattle, and Detroit each has a shot at the final spot in the NFC. Now, college football, it may have been the single greatest day in the history of the sport. 2 playoff games, absolutely riveting television. TCU stuns Michigan 51-45 in Phoenix, and will now take on defending champion Georgia, who rallied from 14 down in the fourth quarter to beat Ohio State in the other semi, 42-41. Championship game is in LA. That's a week from tonight. The Bulldogs have opened as a 13.5-point favorite. 13.5. College hoops. Paul's got his Xavier shirt on. They're red hot right now. On Saturday, they knock off the number 2 team in the nation, previously unbeaten UConn. UC, meanwhile, lost yesterday at Temple 70-61. The Bearcats are 10-5 on the year. So, Paul, we got a lot to talk about with the Bengals. We got James Rapine coming up shortly at 10:15. But at least acknowledge your Musketeers are on quite a roll.
Yeah, I mean, that's 8 in a row, and that's a win over the number 2 team in the country. It was a great atmosphere on Saturday. It was electric. It was a sold-out crowd. It wasn't the same environment as when Xavier beat Villanova back in 2016 when it was number 5 and number 1 in the country, but it was probably the best environment at Cintas since then, in my opinion. It was great. It was a good win for Xavier. It'll probably be, I would say, top 15 today when the new rankings come out. And this game was tied at 71 with less than 4 minutes to go, and Xavier closed on a 12-2 run. So it was electric. It was a great environment. It was great for Xavier to win a game like this, a close game that they'd had trouble closing out wins like this earlier in the season. You look at Indiana and Duke, a couple of games that Xavier had chances to win down the stretch. Look at Gonzaga, had chances to win those games down the stretch but couldn't close it out. Feels like this group's grown together now in the last month or so. They've won 8 in a row, and now you have a bye week this week before you go to Villanova on Saturday. Haven't won at Villanova since you joined the Big East. So a couple of big mountains to climb after you beat UConn and now go to Villanova. Some tall tasks for Xavier, but after Saturday, who knows what this team's ceiling is, Tom? We'll see.
Well, we'll see. I mean, they got the right man coaching, that's for sure. We will talk about Xavier later in the week. But, fellas, you guys are there in town. You can't help but turn on any of the national shows, whether they were yesterday in the pregame shows on CBS and Fox, whether it was on the NFL Network. Everybody is talking about this matchup tonight of the Bengals versus the Bills. Paul Diener Jr. in the Athletic wrote what I thought was a very interesting story this morning about really the unknown between these two teams, meaning that the Bengals have played the Chiefs 3 times in the last year. And while they're not a divisional opponent, you feel like both of the teams probably know one another pretty well. I mean, 3 times in one calendar year, that's more times than you play teams in your own division, more times than not in one calendar year, although the Bengals, well, it will be because they're not playing the Ravens, the Bengals, until now that we're in the new year. So they've only played each of their division opponents, even going back to last January, 2 times. They played Kansas City more in this calendar year of 2022 than anybody else. They have not played the Buffalo Bills. And I think that there's sort of an unknown here that these two teams have one another. And in his article, he points out it should be extremely interesting to see how each team attacks the other. Because normally when you've got, let's again use the Kansas City example. You can go back and look what you did against this team the 1 time, the 2nd time, the 3rd time, what they did against you. There's none of that here besides watching the team you're playing against everybody else. I just think this game, I sure hope it lives up to the hype, like the college football playoff games did. And we'll get to those a little bit later on. But I sure hope it plays up to the hype. I mean, the feeling around the town, fellas, has got to be off the charts. Casey?
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with you, Thom. This game, at least for the fans, feels like it's the biggest game of the year. And probably for the NFL world, it probably feels like the biggest game of the year. I mean, these are 2 really good teams with quarterbacks that are regarded as some of the top 3. So you're looking at a game where it's the best of the best. That's really what it boils down to, is that these 2 teams are the best of the best, especially in the AFC, regardless of what Kansas City's record is. These 2 teams, whoever wins tonight is going to be the favorite in the AFC to win the whole thing.
Well, I don't know if I'm going that far. I mean, Kansas City, at the end of the day, Kansas City has the same number of losses as Buffalo. And right now, Buffalo holds a tiebreak over Kansas City because they beat them early in the year.
Right.
They would be the number 1 seed if it ended today. I'm not in any form or fashion ready to concede that the Bengals and the Bills are both for sure better than Kansas City, especially if Kansas City gets home field advantage throughout the playoffs. Are you?
I mean, I would, because both teams have already beat Kansas City. I think Kansas City is slotted at 3, regardless of what happens. It's going to be either Bengals, Bills, Chiefs, or Bills, Bengals, Chiefs. That's the order in the AFC. That's the order that's going to be, but regardless of what happens tonight. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I don't know. There's just something still in the back of my head with the Chiefs that as much as the Bengals have beat the Chiefs, I get it. Look, the chat's going to say, the Bengals have beat the Chiefs 3 times in a row. I get that. But I also think there's a reason that they're the number 1 seed. And now, depending on what happens tonight, if we get a ESPN score prediction type result tonight, then
yeah, that would be bad.
That would be a tough look.
That would be bad.
That'd be tough. You know what, Thom? Here's what I'll say, Thom.
All right.
I hope, just like you, that after the build-up, because it feels a lot of times in sports, like when you build games up like this, there's so much anticipation. There's the national spotlight. It's Monday Night Football. You have all the eyeballs around the entire NFL world looking down on this game between 2 young quarterbacks finally squaring off in a game that may or may not mean a ton for the postseason, just depending on how things shake out, but means a lot just for the overall culture of the game and how this landscape of the NFL is being viewed through the lens of these young quarterbacks right now. I am with you, Thom. I am very much with you, Thom, where you hope after all of this anticipation and build-up that you get a good game, that it's not a dud, that somebody doesn't get hurt, that it's not the 3rd quarter and it's 10-7 and you're going, man, we waited for this. You want this to be 35-28 or something like that.
Well, look, and I mean, we got a lot of people in the chat, that are talking about. Eric is talking about, the only reason they're the number 1 seed. You look at 4 free wins against the Broncos and the Raiders. Hey, look, You know, you play in the division you play in, and everybody knows that ahead of time. Okay, Kansas City has played a great schedule. They've played like the Bengals, a first-place schedule from last year. Just like the Bills, they played a first-place schedule this year. Now, you know, you look at maybe who they play. You don't think the Bengals caught a break this year by playing the NFC South? I mean, come on, okay? So let's not get into the whole thing about who you played, who you didn't play. The bottom line is all three of those teams, Bills, Chiefs, Bengals, played first-place schedules this season. End of story. Now, you watched the Stidham kid yesterday for the Raiders. He takes over for Derek Carr. And let me know, fellas, when James Rapine is set to go, and we'll bring him in.
He is here.
Oh, he is here. Okay, well, then let's get right to James and talk more about this game. James, can't thank you enough for joining us on a Monday morning, and you're going to have a long day and a long night, hopefully an exciting night ahead. Happy New Year to you. I hope you and your family had a great Christmas. I assume everybody's doing all right.
Yeah, everything's good, Tom. I appreciate it. Happy New Year to you, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, you know, James, you and I talked about this a little more than a week ago. In my opinion, in the 30-something years that I've been around Cincinnati, longer than that, what am I talking about? For almost 50 years. Lived out of town a little bit. But I can remember a lot of big-time games here that were played. I remember during the Boomer years when Chicago came to town. But that was a Saturday or Sunday afternoon, 1 o'clock game. You know, clearly there have been some highly anticipated regular season games here in Cincinnati. I can't remember. Maybe I'm wrong. I can't remember one more hyped up than this one tonight. Can you?
I can't. And spoiler alert, I don't go as far back. But, you know, I certainly remember some of these big games, right? The as bad as the 90s were, how cool was it when Chad and Carson and that group was on Monday Night Football multiple times. And, you know, whether it was playing the Colts, which ended up being a loss, the Chad proposal game, that was a pretty anticipated game, Peyton Manning and Marvin Harrison versus Chad and Carson and TJ. So that was a big one. Obviously, you have some playoff games that were, you know, super exciting. But from a regular season standpoint, I don't think there's one. I think this is the biggest, most anticipated game in the history of Paycor Stadium. And a lot of times we get excited and we're saying things in the moment and all of those things. No, I think that holds true. And part of it is because of the records, and you'll see that from national media today and all of those things. It's a historic Monday Night Football matchup, all of those things. The other part is these Bengals are really good and they're cool. Yeah. They're fun to root for. And, you know, Joe Burrow, a lot of people love him and some people dislike him, but it's because they don't have him on their team. Jamar Chase is one of the most likable players in the NFL. And so when you combine that with another team in Buffalo who 5 years ago dreamt of being in this position, much like the Bengals, these two teams are easy to root for. I think it's a heck of a matchup. I'm excited to see it for sure.
All right, let's start with injuries. Who do you suspect is going to play tonight that we did not think would play? And is there anybody that's not going to play that we thought was going to play?
Hayden Hurst is going to play, and we thought he was going to play. So we'll get the softballs out of the way first. The tough one, and I'm not afraid to say I don't know. I don't know about Sam Hubbard because I talked to him on Friday. All the days are weird with the longer week. On Friday, and it sounded like, if I had to read between the tea leaves, that he wasn't going to play. But unlike Hayden Hurst last week, where they ruled him out a day later after Zach Taylor was kind of coy about things, they haven't done that. And they called him a game time decision. And maybe they're just playing games behind the scenes and trying to make sure that the Bills have to prepare for Sam Hubbard. But we know how important this game is. We know what's on the line. Now we certainly know they can win the North tonight and control their own destiny and make a decision on what they do against the Ravens next Sunday if they win tonight. So there's a lot of advantages to handling business tonight. So it wouldn't shock me one bit if Sam Hubbard plays, because we've seen a lot of guys on this team play. At the same time, if I had to lean I lean towards him not playing. We'll see, though, because I'm not going to lie to you, Tom. I'm guessing here. I'm not sure if he's going to suit up or not.
But look, I mean, I think a lot of people, James, when you get down the end of the day, sometimes doctors included. I mean, doctors will remind you all the time. While many of us think they are God and can play God, they can't. And sometimes there are just things they don't know. And perhaps that's where we are right now with Hubbard. Is there a matchup, whether it's player against player or players against players or unit against unit? If there's one or two of those you see, at least right now on paper, and nobody has a crystal ball, that could be the determining factor in this game, you would say they or would be what?
Well, I think that this Bengals wide receiver unit, and I'll make it a little bigger, the skill players. So I'll add Hayden Hurst, Joe Mixon, Samaje Perine. Especially the receiver group, they were underwhelming last week for the high, as a whole, for the high standards that we have for them, which they should be high. It's a special unit.
Yep.
They need to be special tonight. If the Bengals are going to win, I find it hard to believe that Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon, Hayden Hurst, that they can play outside of Hurst the way they did last week and beat this Bills team. I think they need to be dominant. I certainly think they're capable of doing that. And whether it was passes that could have been caught, should have been caught, but weren't caught last week, Joe Burrow threw about 6 touchdowns on paper. And they were tough catches, but he was dropping dimes. So you just want him to play the way he played last week outside of the pick 6. That was on him. Outside of the pick 6. You need these receivers to probably have their best game of the season. I talked about it on Locked On Bengals on our preview show. Jamar Chase hasn't had a 200-yard game this year. Hasn't had a 150-yard game this year. 200's a lot to ask for any receiver, but $150, I think that's kind of in the realm of where you need him to be, especially when you look at this Bills team. They struggle to tackle. Jamar Chase, hard to tackle. So they should be able to get some yards after catch as well. So that's one. And then the obvious one, Isaiah Prince at right tackle. How does he hold up against a former first-round pick from a year ago, Gregory Rousseau, who's came on and played pretty well with Von Miller out? That's a huge, huge matchup. And if he can hold up there, if this Bengals offensive line can hold up, I think this offense is going to be able to score with the Bills, no doubt.
One trait of Zach Taylor that he's not going to come out and he's not going to not throw a guy under the bus. I don't mean it that way, but I mean he's not going to get into certain decisions that might reveal shortcomings about certain players and or their talents. Okay? At the end of the day, you're able to talk to people being in that locker room every day. Why the move to Prince? At the end of the day, Prince is starting this week because
they clearly trust him more. And he took a ton of reps at right tackle last year, and we know that started in the Super Bowl for them. And it's unique because it surprised me. I think it surprised everybody. Everyone expected Akeem Adeniji. But if I would have said this in July, before he injured that arm of his, that wrist of his, Isaiah Prince I'm talking about, it wasn't surprising. He was the third tackle, and that was their option. But he got injured, and so then they had to try other guys. We've seen Akeem Adeniji play that extra tackle role, and that's going to be his role tonight. That doesn't really change much for him. And I think they looked at it. They said, oh, well, Isaiah's healthy, and even though he's on the practice squad, that's our guy. Now, that doesn't mean that it has to stay that way. If he struggles, he's still on the practice squad. They could just go to Akeem Adeniji tonight or next week or, in the playoffs. So I don't think he's signed, sealed, delivered, the starting right tackle for the rest of the season. But they looked at it, and when it came down to it, regardless of him being on the practice squad, I think they said, hey, let's roll with the guy we trust the most.
All right, I want to bounce around, James, with you about a couple other topics around the league because you're very tuned into what else is happening. And we'll start in the AFC North. Baltimore loses again last night. Bengals need a tie or a win in either of their last 2 games. They're division champs. We know that. Baltimore has now slipped down to the number 7 or 6 seed, in the AFC playoff picture. They don't know, like you were referring to earlier. I don't think anybody knows. I don't think Lamar Jackson knows if he's playing this coming Sunday or not. The bottom line is, after initially winning some games without him, now they're not winning games and looking very bad without him. Does this enhance his chances of being signed to a long-term contract in Baltimore, or because it's now, 2 or 3 times over the last 4 years he's hurt and missing a lot of time, is that all of a sudden going to cost him maybe getting a long-term contract? How do you see that playing out? To me, that's a tough spot to be in Baltimore.
It is. And I think Baltimore, one, they're not going to win the Super Bowl with Lamar, without Lamar. And so they need to look in the mirror and decide, what do we want to be? Do we want to be this option team that runs it and has a really good tight end and wins with defense? And all of that sounds good until you look around the league and you see Joe Burrow in your division, Josh Allen, who can throw it all over the field, Patrick Mahomes, guys that are, Justin Herbert, put him in there.
I throw Deshaun Watson in that group. I mean, even though he has not played well since coming back, I mean, next year you got to believe he's going to be back to being the player he wants, or at least a chance.
Yes, for sure. And so when we last saw Deshaun, he was better than what you had. Last saw him with Houston playing at his elite level. And so I think that's the part of it. Do you want to keep this construction? And so they have 2 options. One, pay Lamar and build around him like you would build around a more traditional quarterback and see if that works, which I'm not saying Lamar is Jalen Hurts, but the Eagles went and got A.J. Brown for Jalen Hurts, and guess what? It's helped them a lot this year. Devontae Smith as well, right? You invest in weapons, it matters. So we haven't seen them do that around Lamar Jackson. That's what I would have done years ago, and I've talked about. And maybe it's hard to get receivers there. So if that's the case, then maybe you do decide to move on. And there are going to be some veteran quarterbacks out there, to bridge the gap, so to speak. It's not like you just have to draft one. You could go that route if you want to. But what's Lamar worth at this point from a trade value standpoint? I think Miami would give up a lot. I think Atlanta would give up a lot. I think there are teams out there that would be in on Lamar Jackson. And so if they want out, if they don't think this is the blueprint long term, I think the injuries now, back-to-back-to-back years in and out of the lineup, that gives them an out. So it's kind of their call, and it's going to be really, really interesting. You're right, because Lamar Jackson, former NFL MVP, hard to give up on him. At the same time, it might be worth it to turn the page and bring someone else in that they believe in more if they don't believe in putting weapons around Lamar, or you just invest in those weapons and see if that works.
Circling back for a minute to Josh Allen, and this has nothing to, well, I guess you could say it has everything to do with playing the Bengals tonight, because they're playing the Bengals tonight. But when I started really looking into some of his stats, and I've always kind of felt, and I've said it on this show, that I think he gets very sloppy with the ball, just watching their games. I did not realize he had thrown 13 interceptions. I did not realize he's fumbled the ball 13 times. Now, he's lost 5 of the 13. But he's put the ball on the deck or into opponents' hands, potentially, 26 times this year. 18 for sure. I don't know how you put the guy. He's a dynamic player. He's got all kinds of tools. He can do a lot of things that most guys can't do. But I just don't know how you put this guy in the same category as Mahomes and Burrow. Am I way out of left field in saying that?
It's all about personal preference, much like the conversation we were having with about Lamar. Do you want the guy that can throw it 3 miles and make every throw, every highlight play, everything? There's things that Josh Allen can do that Joe Burrow just can't do. Throws off platform that Joe Burrow won't make. And a lot of people see those things. And, I bet you if you polled nationally, most people would say Josh Allen. They would take Josh Allen over Joe Burrow. If you took a national poll from casual NFL fans on up to diehards and statisticians, all of the above. But I agree with you. I think the turnovers, that's one element of tonight where you look at it and you say, all right, much like Brett Favre back in the day, he's going to give you a couple chances. And you have to take advantage of those chances because he's so talented and he's tough to bring down, and it could be 3rd and 18, and he could run for 21 or throw for 31. And that's realistic. That wouldn't be crazy. That's a normal Josh Allen play. He's also going to give you a few shots, and you have to take advantage of those in games like this. So he should be, to me, he's in that conversation. He's in that realm. But would I take Mahomes over Allen? Absolutely. And if you think I'm going to come on here and say I would take Allen over Burrow, well, I'm not saying that either. So, yeah, I think it's he's right where he needs to be. In Burrow, it's a perfect fit here in Cincinnati for sure.
Now, look, somebody on the chat brings up the point, said, look, Burrow's fumbled it 5 times, lost 2. That's a significant difference between 13 and 5. And Burrow has thrown 1 fewer interception so far this year than Allen. But the last thing
he
I
also
want to ask
threw
you
so many. He also threw so many in week 1. That, and if you look back,
right.
I was going through.
Exactly.
I was deleting. Yeah, and I was deleting some videos just to clear up some space and back from week 1. And I was like, oh man, like we knew he lost weight, but when you look at him now versus just looking back then, it's like, oh man, he still wasn't the Joe Burrow we know today, no doubt.
Well, those are 5 picks, or 4 picks and a fumble, right? From week 1, if I remember that. I mean, that's insane.
Yep.
Okay, the last thing I want to ask you about, because I think it is unbelievable what's going on in San Francisco. This Brock Purdy, I mean, and not just him. We can talk about him in a second. But when you look at their team, they start the season with Trey Lance. And again, I just try to put this into perspective of if it was your team, whoever your team is, and for many of us, it's the Bengals. Okay, if the Bengals would have started this season, you help me because you know who the 3rd quarterback is. I have no idea. If you started the year with Joe Burrow, then you went to Brandon Allen, who I think is one of the worst backup quarterbacks in the league. You didn't say that. I said that. Now you go to the number 3. Who would be the number 3 guy for the Bengals?
Jake Browning.
Okay. The kid out of Washington, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. All right. All of a sudden, this Purdy guy, I mean, they've won 9 in a row. They went from Trey Lance to Jimmy Garoppolo to now this guy, as everybody knows, Mr. Irrelevant, last guy picked in the draft. And they, for the first time, learned something about him yesterday, where the only snaps he had taken in his career when the 49ers were behind in the 4th quarter is when he was filling in for Garoppolo when they were getting their tails kicked. Well, now all of a sudden yesterday he comes in, or he's in the game, they're down, brings him back, wins it in overtime. I think right now that's the best team in the league. You agree or disagree?
I think they're playing like it. Would I pick them to win the Super Bowl? No. Because if you think I'm picking Brock Purdy, even though it's a really good roster,
right,
over Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow or Josh Allen, I can't do it. And I think it's going to be one of those 3 teams in the Super Bowl from the AFC. So they're playing great. I would love to see Bengals 49ers round 3. Almost got it last year. I thought the Bengals would have won it then. We'll see if we get it this year. But yeah, I do think that as of right now, out of the NFC, hard to doubt them. And now they could stumble into the 1 seed.
Yeah, I know.
Man, if they get the 1 seed, then yeah, they're certainly the favorites in the NFC, and they might be regardless because of that offense, the weapons, the ability, that defense. I get it. They gave up points yesterday, but that's good for them. That's good to test them that way because the defense stepped up and made big plays down the stretch and obviously in overtime as well.
Well, James, you're a lucky man. You get to be there in person tonight. I know it'll be a very, very late night. We thank you for taking the time to join us today. And enjoy the game tonight, my friend. You're a lucky man to be there.
I'm excited. I just hope it delivers. I hope it's a close one, a tight one, and who knows. So you mentioned tie earlier in this interview. Hopefully it's not a tie because that means that there's an overtime period, which would mean it would be a late night.
Yes. Let's hope and pray, just for everybody's sake. Ties only happen in soccer. They don't happen in football, or they shouldn't happen in football. All right. Have a good one tonight, my friend. Take care, James.
Thanks, Thom. You too.
All right. James Rapine, kind enough to join us. Great to have him with us on the program as always. Many of you agree that, he's becoming the Bengal insider guy, not just on this show, but in general. I mean, Casey, Paul, this guy laid it all out there. Hey, and by the way, before we go any further, okay, while I was gone over the weekend, we have a new deal now with Betfred Sportsbook. Could you please, either one of you, tell me a little bit more about what is going on? And it's such an honor and a privilege to have them on board with the program and on Chatterbox Sports.
Yes, absolutely. And actually, Thom, Casey and I, we're going to talk about it, but also Trace is going to come in here in just a few minutes and set the scene and lay out all the details and give everybody here a full explanation on it. So I am going to let Trace do all of the talking on that, but just to preview that, yes, we did sign a deal with Betfred Sports. You can see it down here along the scroller. You can see the link down there to Betfred Sports. They have an app that you can download and join if you're in the state of Ohio.
Show them the new picks graphic.
So, Casey, let's just do the picks now. Thom, let's do the picks now because
all right, let's do them right now, and they're brought to you by Betfred Sportsbook, correct?
That is exactly right. So you can see up there, presented by Betfred Sportsbook. Betfred is the official betting partner now of Chatterbox Sports. Anytime you hear us taking a line for a game, if you look at the lines down at the bottom of the screen, all of those lines come from the Betfred Sportsbook. So we'll be partnering with them for content, everything like that down the line. We're really excited about that because not only the content that we have, but the content that other content creators have around the city. There are so many big names, good people, really talented content creators that Betfred has signed that now we can work with and do stuff with. So all of that combined is going to lead to a pretty, I think, fruitful partnership with Betfred. But Trace will get into a lot of that more in just a minute. So,
well, they are for those who don't know, they are the sportsbook partner of the Cincinnati Bengals. And so, hey, look, they've been very active in the market, any market that they go to. And I was doing a lot of research on them over the weekend when Trace told me about the deal. They are the oldest sports book in England and have been around forever. And it's a fascinating company because the guy who started the company has also formed another company where they're televising sports. So they've not only become a sports book, they are also televising rugby, among other things, in Europe. And so we're thrilled to have them here at Chatterbox Sports. All right, You just put up the numbers from go ahead. Were you getting ready to say something, Paul?
Yeah, I was just going to say, off of that, we saw the graphic here, Thom. So I was at the century mark, but you guys are right there on our heels. And I'll tell you what, I mean, this is anybody's game here with just a couple of weeks left.
Okay, well, then let's go right through them. I mean, let's go ahead and get right to it and find out how we did over the weekend.
And you can
we talk about some of these games a little bit later on.
This is just a generic graphic here, but you can see Betfred getting some love there that we're going to change things up there as the season goes on. So let's get right into it. We picked 11 games this weekend. 10 games have already happened. The one game that has not happened, of course, is the Bengals game tonight. And we start with South Carolina and Notre Dame. The Irish were favored by 3.5. Thom and Casey, you both picked the Gamecocks. Paul picked the Irish, and the Irish covered.
Yeah, and I'm the dummy who said Notre Dame couldn't score, and they scored almost 50 in that game. So move on.
Thom, your OU Bobcats at the buzzer at the end. A-Town.
Boys, I don't know what to tell you. 10-4 for the Bobcats, and their losses were to the likes of like Penn State, Iowa State. I mean, the Mid-American Conference in the bowl season, if I'm not mistaken, only lost one game. One game. Might have been two. I forgot about Miami losing that tight one. But the Mid-American Conference played great football during the bowl season, and hopefully Curtis Rourke comes back next year. His senior year, Bobcats win it all.
Yep, they were the MAC was 4-2 in bowl season. All
there
right.
You go.
So, Tom, you and I picked OU. Casey picked Wyoming.
Okay.
All right, Tennessee and Clemson. Clemson was favored by 6. Tennessee big, and we're all winners.
Move on.
Ohio State and Georgia. Georgia won it, but all of us picked the Buckeyes, and they covered.
Yes, they did, and we'll talk more about that game and the other one, which you're about to mention here in a moment.
TCU and Michigan. I didn't pick them. You guys both picked the Horned Frogs, and you're both winners.
Attaboy, Casey. Attaboy, Casey. Stick with our guy. Sonny Dykes. Max Duggan. Leaders of men. Go ahead.
On to the NFL. Kansas
Drill
City.
Georgia. Drill Georgia. Drill Georgia. Go ahead.
On to the Kansas City minus 12.5. We talk a lot about how we hate those big spreads. Denver covers easily. All three of us are winners.
Yeah, and that was a good game. I mean, that was one I think every Bengals fan was either, checking out the scores on their phone, or maybe they were watching it on TV, where you're saying, oh, is this the break the Bengals need to have potentially a shot at that number 1 seed? Because if they beat Buffalo tonight, they would have a tie break if all the records are the same over both of those teams on head-to-head competition. Can the Stidham kid play well again for the Raiders next week? They took the Niners to overtime. That game will be in Las Vegas. That game is going to get, by the way, is on Saturday, that game. So we'll know before the Bengals even take the field Sunday if they have a chance to be the number 1 overall seed. Well, we would know officially, I guess, tonight. If they lost tonight, they can't be the number 1 seed. So they got to win tonight. Have they declared, by the way, what the Sunday night flex game is yet?
They have not said what the Sunday night game is, but what I will say, and I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago on here, and it did actually end up happening, the Jaguars and Titans are going to play on Saturday, not Sunday. It will not be the Sunday night game.
Well, then I can promise you can take it to the bank. It's going to be Detroit at Green Bay. You can book it. That will be the Sunday night game.
Yeah.
Packers win, they're in. Lose, perhaps out. Lions. Now, granted, the Lions, we potentially would know if they had a chance to get in based on what Seattle does on Sunday. Who does Seattle play Sunday?
The Rams.
Rams.
Now, Rams are just terrible. Good Lord. I mean, talk about a – anyway, okay, so that's what's going to happen, because the only 3 teams left vying for that final playoff spot in the NFC are Green Bay, Detroit, Seattle. If Seattle were to lose on Sunday, and a long shot of that happening, but that means it's a winner-take-all game between Detroit and Green Bay. Winner is in.
Yep.
That's going to be the Sunday night game. Okay, go ahead.
All right. So, wait, we just picked Kansas City, Denver. All right, Carolina, Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay covered it. Tom, you and I are winners. Casey picked the Panthers.
Tom Brady, boys, I'll tell you right now, we know for sure the Buccaneers are in the playoffs, and they're going to get a home game. And right now, and as we brought up in the monologue, it's really subject to change now all of a sudden with Philadelphia losing 2 in a row. Dallas 1 game behind them. 49ers 1 game behind them for the number 1 seed. So a lot could change. But if somehow Rodgers gets in, how would you like to be the number 2 seed playing in the first round against Aaron Rodgers, or the number 5 seed, let's say the Dallas Cowboys, having to play Tom Brady and the Bucs?
Well, all Green Bay has to do is win next week.
That's what I'm saying. And they're in it. And they would be the final spot, the number 7 seed, and have to play the number 2 seed, which right now would be actually, with Minnesota losing yesterday, I had not checked to see who moved up to the number 2 seed as we stand right now in the NFC. Let me take a look here real quick.
I got you.
Number 2 seed in the NFC now belongs to the San Francisco 49ers.
Yep.
They win a tiebreak over Minnesota based on win percentage in conference games. So as it stands right now, you got Philly 1, San Fran 2, Minnesota 3, Tampa Bay 4. Tampa Bay is going to stay 4 no matter what. But you have Philadelphia, San Francisco, Dallas, and on the outside looking in, Minnesota, all with a chance to be the number 1 seed in the NFC. Pretty exciting stuff.
Absolutely. All right. Miami and New England. New England did win, but we all lost this on the hook. It was 2.5. They won by 2. We all picked the Patriots.
All right.
Next one. And Thom, you switched here and it paid off. Cleveland and Washington.
There's no doubt.
We were all on the Commanders. You switched to the Brownies, and it paid off.
Well, you look at the Commanders, and it's really a shame because look, I mean, nobody likes Daniel Snyder. Okay, so it's hard to root for anything Daniel Snyder's a part of, but I think everybody universally likes Ron Rivera, right? Everybody likes. How can you not like that guy? And they've lost 3 in a row to end the season, and now they're eliminated. DUN done. Correct me if I'm wrong. The Brownies are 7-9.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. They're finishing up okay. Go ahead.
And then the last one that we haven't that hasn't happened yet. Pittsburgh beat Baltimore last night. We all picked the Steelers.
Okay. So where are we now with one more to go?
So here it is with just the Bengals remaining.
Oh, Casey, I got a bad feeling. Oh, boy.
Yeah, I had a really rough weekend. It was rough.
Boy, this is coming down to the wire, boys.
Tom Brady was lucky.
I'm reminding myself a lot of Tom Brady right now. Down in the fourth quarter, been down the entire game, and here we are down to the last 7-8 minutes. And if you notice, there was a time I was about 17-18 back, and now we're down to 5.
It's getting close.
It's getting right there, Tom.
It's also getting deep. It's also getting deep. But Sir Boy Wonder's always got my back.
We are just going by wins, right? Not winning percentage. We're just going by wins.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Because I know, as Boom Shakalaka points out, we redid our graphic system today. We do know that there is a discrepancy in the loss between the games that we have picked, but the win total is correct. So that's why I just wanted to make sure. Because the win total is correct. I will put it that way. I went back and double-checked this morning. The wins are correct, and that's what matters. In case you have 86. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The Emperor makes a point, says, Tom, you better pick opposite of Paul every game the rest of the way. We got one more full weekend of NFL regular season. The bowl game season is basically over. We're not picking any of the games going on today. So we're going to have the Bengals game tonight. Next weekend in the NFL, we'll pick the more important games, all the teams that are in the hunt, whether it be to get in the playoffs or a seeding in the playoffs. We're not going to worry about who does Cleveland play next week. I don't even really care about us picking them next week. It makes no difference because unless they're playing a team, they are playing. Oh, yeah, we got to pick them. It's against the Steelers. That's a big game. Okay, that's a big game. Or potentially could be a big game. That's why I really liked and the NFL should do this. And maybe they do it. Maybe that's where baseball got it from. You guys help me. Are all the games this week at the same time except for the Sunday night game?
That's a good question. I don't know. Usually
they haven't announced that yet.
They haven't. I can't remember. It's all getting announced today. There are the 2 games on Saturday. The Chiefs play on Saturday, and Jacksonville, Tennessee is Saturday. Those times are already set. The Chiefs play at 4:30. Casey, 4:30, and then the Jaguars and the Titans play at 8:15, and they have not announced the Sunday schedule yet.
Okay. Well, I'm just trying to remember if they start all the games at the same time because that makes it so much more exciting than having a bunch of games early. Depending on the outcome, now all of a sudden in the nightcap, the afternoon games, late afternoon games, teams could rest their players and all that kind of thing. So I don't know if they do that or not. I know baseball does it. I can't remember. Do we have time to take a break, fellas?
We actually, you know what? We won't take a break. Yeah, you know what? We will. Take a 30-second. Take a 30-second.
You guys take it on the full screen, okay?
All right, we'll be back.
All right.
At United Dairy Farmers, we've perfected freshness in our family bakery, where we use only the finest ingredients, like thick, high-quality glazes on our signature donuts, before delivering them fresh from bakery to store every day. UDF, made for you.
If your AC or furnace is struggling, turn to the experts at Bartell's Heating and Cooling. Their certified technicians get the job done right the first time, and if you need a new unit, Bartell's will give you upfront pricing with no hidden fees. Plus, ask about Bartell's 0% interest financing for 60 months. Learn more at bartellsheatingandcooling.com. Bartell's Heating and Cooling, for a comfortable way of life. Eli's Sports Bar and Grill, proudly sponsoring high school football with 3 locations in Mason, Liberty Township, and Ross, Ohio. Our 10-foot screens guarantee a great view from every seat in the house. Eli's Sports Bar and Grill, the best place in Cincinnati for sports, food, and fun.
Where can you turn when you're in pain? Turn where more high school, college, and pro athletes turn. Where your neighbors and weekend warriors turn. Turn to Beacon Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and get superior care on your schedule. That's the Beacon difference.
Check out our fresh arrivals at Jake Swinney Used Cars. Over 250 used vehicles weekly. All makes, all models. From economy to luxury, Jake Swinney, the original used car superstore.
All right, welcome back to Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Fellas, and I know Trace is probably going to tell us more about Betfred Sports and our partnership with them moving forward, starting today officially, but also the college football games over the weekend. I read a couple of articles where it was pointed out that this was too late in coming, meaning the track record had been going back to 2014, that the semifinal games have by and large been blowouts, going all the way back to 2014. In that first year, Alabama got blown out of the gym by, I think, Ohio State that year. You had Oregon killed somebody, I think Florida State in the other semi. And that was just the beginning of a trend. One thing that cannot be denied, the scoring in the college football playoff, and we're 2 years away from going to 12 teams, which I think everybody's excited about, because these semis traditionally have been blowouts, and then the championship game, you flip a coin. You have a really strong chance of having a lot of good games with a 12-team playoff. But these 2 games, guys, look, I don't care if you're an Ohio State fan, an Ohio State hater. I don't care if you love Michigan or hate Michigan. I don't care if you know nothing about TCU, you follow them all year long. I don't care if Georgia is your guy or you could care less about Kirby Smart or Bennett, who's almost 30 years old or whatever it is, or any of them, right? These games this weekend was everything you want in college football or postseason anything. Let's start with the TCU game. There were decisions made in that game where, and the comments came out in the post game by one of the defenders on TCU. If you remember right, J.J. McCarthy, very talented kid, quarterback at Michigan, bright future ahead of him. I don't think he's a pro guy, but some might. He made the comment about TCU's style of defense, where they play a 3-5-3 is what they do, and they've done it all year long. Okay, and they found a way to win every game except for one. And he made the comment that if TCU plays that defense, there's going to be some smashing going on. And the very first play of the game, the kid runs for almost 60 yards but gets caught from behind. Okay, fast forward, Michigan gets down inside the 2-yard line. Now, this is the team allegedly with the best offensive line in college football. Pros everywhere, okay? They got an outstanding running back. They got great blocking tight ends, the whole 9 yards. And Jim Harbaugh decides to do the Philly special on 4th and goal from a 2. Now, I love Jim Harbaugh. I despise Michigan, but I love Jim Harbaugh. I think he's a great coach. I think he's a good man. I think he stands for a lot of things that I agree with. But the comment was made after the game when they were stopped on that 4th and goal, that first drive of the game. One of the kids on TCU's defense, and not in an arrogant way, he said, "We knew we had them when they reached into the bag of tricks on 4th and goal from a 2. We knew we had them." Now, of course, he didn't know he had them because we were 5 minutes into the game. But it brings up a great point. What in the world, Casey? I don't know if you watched the game. Paul, I don't know if you watched the game. What in the world is Michigan doing? Pulling out the flea flicker. Trace,
Yep.
Good morning to you, my friend.
Good morning, Thom.
Okay, you heard everything I just said. You watched both of the games.
I did.
When you saw Harbaugh try the Philly special on 4th and goal from the 2,
Yeah.
were you in as much disbelief as I was?
I was, because if you're gonna predicate your program, or you're going to sit there and look directly into the eyes of the kids, and also to the narrative around your program at Michigan right now, especially in the last 2 years, has been, we're a smash mouth football team. That's who we are. We're going to line it up, and we're gonna dominate you physically. I don't know how you can stand there and have that message at the end of the game when that's the type of decision that you make. You know, if you run it right up the middle and you get stuffed, then at least you can say, you know what, they were better than us. But the idea that you're going to try to run a trick play and outsmart people, we talked about this on the show, I think it was Friday, and it's like the question was, you know, why does really, really smart coaches, guys that spend 100 hours a week in the office, why do they do things that the average football fan or the average person that's watching just sits there and says that's an idiotic thing to do? And I don't know what the answer is, other than they think they're going to outsmart the other person, and they just overthink things at times. But in a moment like that, you brought it up. You're at the 2-yard line. You run the ball up the middle. You do get stopped. The ball's at the 1-yard line with what you think is you have a good defense. So, you know, I know that everyone's going to sit there and say, well, if it worked, Trace and Thom, you know, they'd be geniuses, and you'd be talking about how great of a play it was. Like, no, I wouldn't. I wouldn't personally, because at the end of the day, like, if you're going to surround your program with the idea, or your identity as a program is that you are a physical, smash-mouth football team, that's not what you do. You do not make that decision at the goal line.
You know, there are a number of ways you can look at all this kind of stuff, okay? And at the end of the day, it's all about how it turns out. Let's be honest about it here. Max Duggan did not play a particularly good game for TCU. They ran the ball very well against a team that everybody thought they couldn't run against, and they did it primarily with a backup running back, because the Miller kid, who's their best running back, I thought he was the best running back in the Big 12 this year. Some would argue that, in Miller. But he got hurt early in the game. Other kid comes in, runs for $150, whatever it was, has a big, long run. Duggan does not play a great game. But J.J. McCarthy. Now, you know, I'm always reluctant to get on kids because they're still college kids. And look, I know stupid stuff that I said and did at 19. J.J. McCarthy's 19. I got a 19-year-old daughter who does stupid stuff. I got a 17-year-old son who does stupid stuff. Okay, so every parent can acknowledge exactly what I just said. But look, I know Jim Harbaugh a little bit, okay? And when he goes back into his hotel room at night, after reading the comment McCarthy makes leading up to the game about TCU and TCU's defense, right, and then McCarthy comes out and throws 2 pick sixes in the game. But even before the game started, Trace, I don't get how these guys come out and say some of the stuff that they do before you're playing in a big game like that. You know the other team is looking for every single sliver of something to get motivated, extra motivation for a game like that. And I think it was acknowledged after the game. The TCU kids had said in a very kind's not the right word. They weren't being malicious. They weren't being I told you so. They weren't saying the guy's a jerk. They weren't saying any of those things. They did say this guy basically said that we had no chance to stop him. And there is that much more motivation.
Yeah, I like the narrative that some people use when they laugh at the notion that oh, Baltimore material, does it really matter, because these kids aren't going to play hard already? It's we're all humans, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we are subject to our surroundings, and if there's times where you see it all the time, kids can get lazy because they're told how good they are, and then on the opposite end, kids that have been struggled their whole life, that have been told they're not any good, they're the ones that have the grit, right? They're the ones that have the it factor that we all talk about. The truth is that stuff does matter. I mean, the idea that you're Michigan, right? The last thing that I would be doing if I was a quarterback or any leader of Michigan is to talk negatively about TCU at all. There's no point in it. And you might say, well, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, they're just going to go play the game. Like, if you tell someone they're not good enough, similar to Ohio State, for a long enough period of time, they're going to work harder. They're going to study longer. They're going to prepare better. And when you line up in front of somebody that tells you that you're not good enough, I don't care what anybody says, you're going to have a little more motivation to play a little bit harder throughout that game. And listen, Michigan did it to themselves a little bit too, Tom. I know that those comments theoretically weren't the difference maker in the game, right? You got to hold on to the football. You don't score a point 2 times inside the 5-yard line. That's probably a large part of the difference. McCarthy threw 2 pick sixes. So, at the end of the day, I don't know if it theoretically made the difference, but there's no denying the fact throughout the history of sports that what you say to somebody or what the narrative is of an opponent or of a team, it does matter. I think it truly does matter. And for him to say that, if nothing else, you could hang your hat on the fact that I think it might be a learning lesson. You would hope so for him of listen, you don't underestimate anybody. There's no point in it. You don't get anything from saying that they're not going to be able to stop you or, we're going to smash it right down their throat. Well, a little bit of humble pie, Yeah.
The other game, obviously you had tremendous rooting interest in that game. You're a Georgia fan, acknowledged. Many wondered, the pregame conversation was Ohio State up for the task? Well, after watching the game, there's no question they were up for the task, and they came to play, and Ryan Day brought them to play, and they're up 14 in the fourth quarter. Both teams had significant injuries before the game. Ohio State certainly took a major hit during the game when Marvin Harrison, and I want to ask you about that play before we get to the overall feelings. Trace, the one mistake people make in the definition of targeting, you do not have to lead with your head to be called for targeting. You can lead with your shoulder pad and hit another player in the head. Stevie Wonder could have seen, that was clearly a shoulder straight to the head hit on Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm not saying it made a difference on who won the game or who lost the game, but the rules are exactly this. And for people who think it has to be helmet to helmet, leading with the crown of your helmet, wrong. You can drill a guy with your shoulder pads in the head, leading with the shoulder, and it's targeting. That's exactly what happened on that play, and I have no idea what they were watching on that play. And it's a play they better get figured out on how to officiate it, because that was brutal, that call.
Yeah, I know that there was a lot of plays in that game that were obviously.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's the only one, but I think we all have to admit that was the most significant one.
It was a significant play, but I'll have to watch it again, Tom, to be fair. And I'm not one to speculate one side or the other just because of fandom. In fact, we'll get into the fact that today I do think Ohio State outplayed Georgia in a large part of that football game. But as far as it goes on that specific play, initially I just said that I will agree to disagree if that is targeting, because one, I don't think he was defenseless. He was getting ready to score a touchdown. He was going to catch the ball for a touchdown, which, the ball, it's not like he was coming over the middle, in my opinion, and the ball was just wildly thrown up in the air, and how he even got hands on it is a credit to not only C.J. Stroud, but to Harrison Jr. as well. When I looked at it initially, and again, I'll go back and look at it again, and I'm not saying that you're wrong or my opinion is right here. It looked to me like he had hit his shoulder into his shoulder pad, which was right next to his helmet, and then Harrison got knocked out with his head kind of hitting the turf. I don't think he got knocked out on the actual hit. That was my initial judgment. I watched that with the telecast. I've not gone back and rewatched it a bunch, to be fair. So I don't know for sure what my strong opinion would be on it. But my initial opinion was that he hit him in a spot that was kind of right near the shoulder pad. And when Harrison Jr. fell on the turf, he banged his head off the side of the turf pretty hard. And I thought that's what caused the concussion. But there's a million plays in that game. I give Ohio State immense amount of credit. I've watched Georgia play a lot of football teams, and they were probably the first team that I've watched where I genuinely felt like if they played 10 times, it would be 6-4, 5-5. They're evenly matched football teams. They're very, very good. Both sides sustained a lot of injuries. I hear Georgia fans on one side talking about how Darnell Washington got hurt in the first quarter, and that made a big difference. And then, you got Stover on the other side for Ohio State that's been knocked out. They don't have Smith and Jigma. They don't have Henderson. So you can't sit here and play the whole injury game with Ohio State. None of that's realistic. None of that's fair. At the end of the day, it was just an unbelievable football game. I think, if anything, that I would say that Ohio State just needs extreme help with is that they can't, Georgia could run the football a little bit, but you can't let Georgia run the football like that. I mean, they were running at what seemed at times, Thom, 15 to 20-yard gains and barely getting touched, And, I know the kids slipped on the big pass, but that was remnants of the Michigan game a little bit there. And it just felt like at times Jim Knowles has some work to do. But on the opposite side, I've always said Kirby Smart's one of the best defensive minds I've ever seen, and he got shredded. I mean, sometimes when you have really good offense, as you said, good offense just beats defense sometimes, especially in the NBA. If you not to jump subjects, but sometimes good offense just beats good defense. There's nothing you can do about it. So those are my overall thoughts on the game. My heart does genuinely go out to Ohio State fans. If I was on the opposite side of that, it'd be tough. I mean, it'd be really, really tough. But
I just the thing that, and we'll spin here in a second to Betfred, but for the life of me, and every fan base has these group of people, and Ohio State is certainly right up there. But what some people have done on social media to this kicker from Ohio State, Noah Ruggles, is just mind-boggling to me. I just cannot believe, and it makes you think, Trace, who are these people? Seriously. What are they doing when they wake up every single morning? Okay, they clearly don't have kids, because anybody in their right mind with children that have had their children get criticized for fill in the blank, there's no way they're going to go get on social media or on some radio talk show and bury a guy for missing a 50-yard field goal. But the venom. And it reflects back. Somebody brings up a great point in the chat. Scott Norwood missed a field goal for the Buffalo Bills in Super Bowl, right? Goes into a deep state of depression. I mean, just if you're thinking about saying something negative about the kicker, let it go and find something else to really worry about or criticize instead of a 21-year-old kid or whatever he is, 20-year-old kid. You got to let it go. This stuff's important. It's not that important.
Yeah, it very much so. And I when as soon as that game was over, I knew that there was going to be a ridiculous amount of speculation or criticism, if you will, of the kicker. Not because he missed it, but the way he missed it as well. And I'll be honest with you, if you go back and you look at the interaction between the holder and the kicker, and I don't want to get deep into this because at the end of the day, I don't really think that we should harp on one kick over an entire football game. Georgia missed 2 kicks. You know, I mean, there's a million different plays you could go back and say, well, if this was different or this was different, the kicker is irrelevant. So the idea we're putting the whole entire game on the kicker is absurd to me. But if you go back and you look at that kick, there was something that went on there with the holder. I don't know enough about holding.
I've heard people make reference to that too.
If you go back and look at it, you go back on YouTube or whatever, you find the kick, and immediately, as soon as he kicked it, the holder kind of put his hands over his face mask and kind of buried his head between his lap, and the kicker, the one that missed the kick, is the one that immediately pulled him up. Now, I don't know if there was a situation where he held the ball completely wrong, and the only people that really know that are the people within that special teams group, or if it's a situation where the kicker is just trying to support his guy.
Right.
But at the end of the day, listen, if you go on social media and you're trying to attack somebody because they missed something, they're the man in the arena. You know, I don't need to sit here and preach, but I've always had the assumption that, listen, even professionals to a small extent, yeah, they get paid millions of dollars, but they put their lives into this, man. That kicker, the Ruggles kid, has been kicking footballs probably since he was, 13, 14 years old.
That's right.
Every single damn day while nobody's paying attention. And the man in the arena, if you look at it or you go read it or whatever term you want to use, like that is largely what a lot of these kids are. Like this is their life. They don't go on vacations. You know, they've spent their entire childhood trying to perfect or become as good as they possibly can at a game that we all enjoy. And at the end of the day, can you criticize them? I think that you can, but I don't think you make it personal. I don't think you can make it personal. And that's where a lot of people cross the line. And, you know, fandom is crazy, and that's why they're called fans. But I'm with you. The idea that the Ruggles kid, it's his fault, is absurd. And I do hope for his sake that he realizes that, you know, a lot of the people that are saying the things they're saying don't have, you know, their opinion shouldn't matter, and they don't have any bearing on his future. So that's an easy thing for me to sit here and say, Tom, and I know that the road's probably not going to be easy for him, but I'd love to see nothing more than him to go make some big kicks next year just for the sake of the kid himself.
All right, let's talk about Betfred, brand new partner with us here on Chatterbox Sports.
Yep. So here's what we're going to do. I know we didn't really get a chance to kind of, with you being remote, we didn't get a chance to prepare, plan a whole lot. We have a cherry on top today. We'll let you do your cherry on top. We'll let you go away. I'll do a little thing with the Betfred right before we do box lunch, and then you'll be back here, I believe. We'll do a show again, obviously, tomorrow, but then you'll be back in here on Wednesday, and when you're back, we'll be able to share all the kind of things that we have the ability, quite frankly, to start doing now with Betfred, but it's a really, really big deal. But there's something that we need to do first. And United Dairy Farmers, as you know, a huge sponsor of this show. And we got the cherry on top, and I think you're going to like this.
All right, let's do it, boys. What do we got here today? Our United Dairy Farmers cherry on.
All right. So I'll tee this up a little bit. There was a guy that was waiting, for those that don't know, there was a guy that was waiting, Tom, for his master's invite, right? He knew that he was going to get invited. You know these things beforehand. I'm talking about the golf tournament for those that aren't too familiar with the Masters. I'm assuming you are. But check this out. This guy was waiting and waiting and waiting for this invite. It turns out that they didn't quite send it to the right address. So I think these guys are going to try to blow this up here and see it. But it says, I'll read it if you can't read it. It says, "Hi, Scott. My name is Scott Stallings as well, and I'm from Georgia. My wife's name is Jennifer, too. Her IG is obviously blacking that out for privacy. We have a condo at blank, and I received a FedEx today from Masters inviting me to play in the Masters tournament April 6th to the 9th, 2023. I'm 100% sure this is not for me. I play, but wow, nowhere near your level. It is a very nice package, complete with everything needed to attend. I think we have some confusion because our names and our wives' names and geographical location. So we have two guys that have the same name and the same wife's name, and he's saying I can be reached, and I am more than happy to send you this package. So think about that, Tom. There it is.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and then he has the audacity to say underneath it, he sends the pictures and he says, I'm really not kidding, I promise.
That is unbelievable. That is a great story.
Can you imagine,
Great
Tom?
story.
So I looked really quickly at Scott Stallings, and it said his message says, literally, I have been checking my mail every day for the past 7 days, 5 times a day for this.
Of course. Of course he has. It's the Masters, for crying out loud. Good for him.
Tom.
Good for him.
He'll never get any better mail. Could you imagine?
No, I can't. Nor will I ever get any piece of mail like that. So I can live vicariously through him.
That's right. All right, Tom, I'll let you sign off, but nonetheless, we're going to take it from here. We appreciate you jumping on remotely. Hopefully you figured out the travel situations, and best of luck getting back to us.
Yep, hopefully getting back tomorrow. All right, buddy. I'll talk to you, and go Bengals tonight. Looking forward to that one.
All righty. Thanks, Tom. All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to a new look, a new era, a new day of Box Lunch. We're switching around a little bit. For those that have been paying attention to the show, you know how it traditionally looks. Obviously, I'm sitting over off to my left at the time, and today we're going to switch it around. And the reason for that is, maybe you saw it, maybe you did not, but late Friday night, we signed on the dotted line with Betfred Sportsbook. And we've decided to give them a slogan, right? We didn't really see a slogan, so we're like, well, we want to make a slogan. They are the sportsbook of Cincinnati. That's TM'd by us. Not them, but by us. They sponsor the Bengals, and they sponsor damn near every small content creator there is within our city, it feels like. And they've given us more or less a huge opportunity. We were right there on the goal line, if you will, of being able to get this deal done for probably the past 3 weeks. And we finally got it across, if you will, and it's going to allow us to do a lot of things. And all I would say is please gamble responsibly. 21 over, must be in Ohio, all the kind of legalities there. But in all seriousness, this is a big deal for Chatterbox Sports. It's one of a few milestones that we're going to get into hopefully over the next few months. And the goal is relatively simple. Just continue to grow, continue to give people an opportunity to hear local sports content, and give people a platform to feel like they have authentic people that care about the city, that want to talk sports. You know, we're obviously active with the chat. We're also on Discord. If you have not seen or you don't know about Discord, but it's just a space to be able to connect and continue to communicate on sports. The link is in our chat. So without further ado, I'm Trace Fowler. We got Reed Mouse and Paul Fritchner over here on our left. Those guys. And then we got Brandon Sejo and Casey McAllister to my right. And we got a whole list of topics. Betfred Sportsbook obviously was the opener there. And again, only 21 plus gambling problem. Call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. And again, you must be in Ohio. But congratulations to the responsible gamblers of Ohio, because we finally, fellas, are legal. We can sit in our own couches. No more driving to Indiana to make those bets anymore. Although I said the other day, I don't know if you guys will join me. And maybe you will.
Oh,
maybe
I will.
You won't.
I will.
But we are going to every year. I think we should do it on the Wednesday before the Masters. It just becomes, that's the tradition, right?
Okay.
There's not a whole lot going on the Wednesday before the Masters. I feel like that's what you do. We just drive over to Indiana. We place our bet in Indiana for old time's sake. What do you think, Paul?
You park over there with the Circle K.
First gas station you see once you cross the line. You got to be like a mile in.
Yeah, you turn off the exit. And you know what the best part about that gas station is when you turn left at the stoplight and then you turn left real quick right again right there in Lawrenceburg. They have a whole strip of parking spaces out there, and they're right there for it. We got to go back. Place our bet on the Masters winner.
See, I go to the fireworks store over there in West Harrison. That was mine because that's the quickest line.
So that's my girlfriend's exit. And I have a very special place in my heart for that fireworks store, because if there was ever a bet that I forgot to put in while I was at her house, that's the last opportunity to pull off before I get back over into the state of Ohio. Won my biggest bet of my life at that fireworks station.
Oh, yeah. So off to my right, we got some new guys. We got some new guys that are relatively new to gambling. The first person that obviously won a bet at this company probably is the only one that's really not a gambler. Has no idea what he's doing.
Not at all.
But Sejo over here can you walk me through who you bet on? Like what?
Don't know what league they play in. Melbourne United covered the spread. They won like 99-86 at 2 a.m. on New Year's Eve over in Australia in basketball.
So
fantastic, man. Casey's the parlay god, as Sir Boy Wonder has put in the chat. Emperor loves your jersey.
I want to make a T-shirt for Casey that says "Almost always almost hits" because that's his parlay slogan. It almost always almost hits.
Hey,
He's always a leg or two off.
I did actually hit a parlay.
Oh, what?
Baby.
Wow.
But
Let's
I
give a round of applause.
I wish I would have posted it on Twitter.
Oh God.
But it was a Lions parlay.
If a parlay falls in the forest and nobody was there to hear it,
exactly.
Did it actually hit?
So, yesterday at the Betfred launch party, we were making fun of Casey or joking about how Casey on our show on Friday was just zooming around the sports books, crafting all these bets. I was sitting next to Brandon, and my man was on every tab on the Betfred Sportsbook, looking at everything. He's like, you can bet on the correct score? You can get the exact thing. He's like, if this hits for $5, I'm a thousandaire.
Well, and the best part about Brandon,
best
part about Brandon was the text that he sent last night where he had the correct score in the Steelers game. He had bet it, and then last night he sends a text into our Chatterbox thread and goes, well, guys, if the Steelers get a pick 6 here and then go for 2, I'm gonna be rich.
I'm gonna win $2,000.
I'm gonna be rich.
Yeah, that's when you know you're gambling. That's when you know you are officially in the gambling brain, is when you start coming up with these ridiculous scenarios. But enough of that. Bengals play on Monday night.
Yes, they do.
For, I don't want to say for the first time in a long time, because that wouldn't be true. I don't feel like, but it is the first time that they've played a team with another record of 11 wins or more, and they have 11 wins. I mean.
Third time in Monday Night Football history.
Right.
Most wins combined.
So here's the deal. I'm in the mindset here as I don't know what I would call myself with the Bengals. I'm not a fan. I wouldn't put myself out there to be that, because here's the last thing I do. Let's get into this topic really fast, and the chat can chime in. I know this is going to be a hot debate. Do we like being bandwagon fans or not? What's the thing on that? Because here's my perception and why I always say I'm not a Bengals fan. I do root for the Bengals. Obviously, I live in Cincinnati, but I'm a Packers fan, and we won't get into all that. But my point is that I don't want to come up here and be like, oh, I'm fired up for the game here on Monday night, and who's this guy? He's not all in. You guys have been all in all year, and you know everything there is about your team, et cetera, et cetera. So the last thing I want to do is come in like a shtick. But it does feel like a big game. And it does feel like that everyone in the NFL is watching that game. But before we get to the game really quickly, let's make a quick take. What's the thought on bandwagon fans in general?
So there's two different kinds of bandwagon fans. There are general sports fans, guys that watch sports or girls that watch sports a lot, and then they just hop on a team because a team's popular. No bueno there. The good bandwagon fans are the ones that don't really care about sports, but when a team's doing real well, they get really excited for your hometown team, like my in-laws who don't watch sports at all, but last night they're talking the Bengals play a big game tomorrow night, don't they? And they're talking about it, and you're like, yeah, they do.
Oh, yeah. What are you doing for the game today?
Those are the welcomed bandwagon fans, those who get excited and want to just rally with the city. Those are the fun ones.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, especially when I'm with you. I don't have anything to add.
The worst ones are when you're a Steelers fan or some other fan, and then the Bengals get good, and you're like, all right, well, the Bengals are good. It's kind of fun when the Bengals are good. No bueno. If you're a fan of another team, stay with that other team. Don't hop on.
Right. Yeah. Fair enough. You got anything to add over there, Ham and Eggers?
I mean,
why are you pointing at me?
Well, I thought you were going to ask the question.
Oh, yeah, Reader, where are you guys taking New Year's Eve pictures tonight, or what do you got going on during the Bengals game?
It is funny.
So you guys taking down the nativity scene? I'm trying to figure out.
Nothing bad's gonna happen. But the reason we're at this Betfred party last night, all of us are together, and I didn't mention the reason that we dipped, which we all kind of left at the same time. The reason we dipped is we had to go over to the in-laws for New Year's Day, have the sauerkraut and the dumplings and everything like that. Always someplace to be.
Yep.
But tonight at 8:30, you're free.
Yes.
That's good. By the way, another scam of the day, if you will, coming down the pike is going to 100% be the sauerkraut and sausage or whatever the term is.
It's good luck.
Pork. It's good luck. That has to be sauerkraut.
Wait, what?
Listen, I'm just saying the sauerkraut market came up with this elaborate scheme to be we need to sell some more sauerkraut, guys.
We're
struggling.
Big sauerkraut. I was on
Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving turkey's got its day. Mashed potatoes, green beans, and we get left out. Thanksgiving, there isn't sauerkraut. They're we got to come up with something. So they did what, Hallmark does. They came up with their own Valentine's Day, and they just made it New Year's. And if you don't, I mean, I was hearing crazy stuff yesterday. I was hearing stuff like, if you don't eat it, you lose a family member. I'm like, what?
What?
Wait a minute.
I've never
here.
heard of this.
I'm just saying, they're getting crazy. I was like, you guys are dead serious about this. My family, I'm being honest. I don't know if maybe you ate sauerkraut, Reed.
I'm a German family. It's a mouse thing, right? That's a German thing.
I mean,
We're
wild.
We're the same way. No. So, but I did not have any yesterday. But so they're
you're gonna lose a family member, Paul.
Oh, don't say it.
I'm sorry.
But here's the difference in why I'm not worried about it this year is because we didn't even make it and eat it. The years where they make it and eat it, and then I still say no because I hate it so much. I'm not going to be swayed by big sauerkraut. Okay. I'm not going to let them hold that.
There's
power
some
over
German
me.
farmer that just had a bunch of cabbage. Like, we got to get rid of this cabbage like, right now. And it's New Year's.
New Year's.
Let's start a tradition. Everyone eats the sauerkraut.
All right, fair enough. So let's get back to this game on Monday night. One thing that James Rapine just said during the show that I was relatively like, I was like, oh, James, really smart comment. By the way, Power Rangers guy, we are going to have the best intro for James Rapine in the history of Off the Bench next time he comes on.
Oh,
I am being serious. We are going to cook up something that is going to make him laugh out loud or smile when he comes on. James Rapine is one of the best people at his job. But one thing I got with James that we're going to have to work on is we're going to have to get some smiles and some laughs out of my guy. You know what I mean? He comes on and he's just dead set focused, giving you the facts. I need some smiles. I need some laughs. I think we got just what it takes to do that the next time James comes on. So that's coming. But he did say something insightful, and that was Josh Allen reminds him a little bit of like a Brett Favre. You know there's going to be 2 or 3 times during this game that he's going to give you an opportunity to obtain a turnover. And I never really thought about Allen in that way before. You guys have obviously watched a lot of football this year. You know the Bengals as well as anybody. The Bengals find a way, it seems like, in every big game to make that big play on defense. They give up yards sometimes, right? Mm-hmm. They seem like they're between the 20s, if you will. They do give up some yards. But when it comes time to make a play, they've done it in the Chiefs game. They did it in the Titans games a few weeks back. They did it against the Patriots when they needed it the most. And at the end of the day, maybe that's the difference. Maybe it's not. Your take on the idea that Josh Allen's going to give the Bengals an opportunity to make some big plays.
It's hard to quantify turnovers, right? Like making the big play. You can't quantify it, but it does. You always get this feeling in your gut with the Bengals is like, man, we need a turnover right now. And to this point in the season, they've done that. And Josh Allen is no stranger to making mistakes. They rely heavily too much on him to make big plays throughout the day. So, of course, just like Brett Favre, as you guys alluded to, he's gonna give you an opportunity. I'd like to see it earlier in the game.
I always get nervous in a football game where you feel like you have to rely on a turnover. And I don't necessarily think that the Bengals are relying on a turnover to win the game tonight because if you are, that's just not a recipe for success, right? Turnovers aren't something guaranteed in a game. You can guarantee that you can go out and throw the ball. You can go out and guarantee that you can run the ball. I don't know how well, but you can go out there and say that you're going to do it because that's how the game gets played. But to go out there and say that, well, we need 2 turnovers to win this game, that's just not guaranteed in a football game. And I always feel like when I hear people talk about, oh, well, we got to – if the Bengals want to win tonight, they need an interception and a fumble. Well, what if the Bills just don't fumble the football? Sure. You can't rely on that. So
Can we talk about how just getting the opportunity as sports fans to see Josh Allen is kind of big. Like they're Buffalo, they play at 1 p.m. more often than not. So normally the Bengals are playing at the same time. Yeah, they've gotten the marquee games. Yeah, you get to see them in the postseason the past few years. But this is the first time to get like on eyes. Josh Allen versus the Bengals is going to be great.
It really is. And this game, to me, I don't expect it to be like the Bills-Chiefs this year, where it was a 20-24 game kind of defensive type battle. I actually expect it to be more like the Bills-Chiefs game in the playoffs, where it was just like, holy crap, towards the end, it was just like back and forth, back and forth. There's more offensive power that the Bengals have that I don't think the Bills can keep up with. And I think Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, without Awuzie and all of us being healthy, I just don't think we're going to be able to cover them. So it's going to be back and forth. We're going to see some sort of light show. I don't know if you all feel the same way. I don't feel like it's going to be a defensive battle. I say like 28-24. Is that good? Is that a good score? Is that fun? Is that a high octane battle?
That's a good score, isn't it? Funny, like a high scoring NFL game is both teams around 25. In college, they get to like 40, and that's a high score.
Yeah. Like 28-24. What went wrong?
Yeah. I mean, that's the one thing I'll say quickly about college football is like it's a different sport at times. It truly is just a completely different product. I mean, if the TCU Michigan game was just bonkers for like a quarter and a half, right? I just noticed something. Seho over here was talking about getting a hat last time on the marketplace. You guys remember that?
Is that it? Is that the throwback?
That has to be the hat.
This is the hat.
That's a good hat.
It matches. It pairs with the. You know how you pair wine with certain food. This mustache really pairs well with this hat.
It is a throwback to the late 80s, right then and there.
Yep. What movie would I be in?
What movie would you be in? Top Gun?
Yeah, I feel like that's
you look just like Tom Cruise.
Yeah, thanks.
Just as handsome.
Either Top Gun or some kind of movie that has a lot of firefighters involved. That you feel like you're supposed to be on ladder 11 or something like that right now. No?
Oh, I was thinking. You said ladder 11. I thought of that Nicolas Cage World Trade Center movie. That was the first thing that came to my mind, where they get trapped underneath the World Trade. I was like, ooh, we're going dark here, Trace.
No, that's not what I was getting at. I was just meant a firefighter movie.
Okay.
No, more or less.
Better.
As many of you know, I'm not cultured. I don't know many movies. So if Ladder 11's a movie that is very, very controversial, then I stand corrected, and I do not want to talk about it. So, but is that true?
I don't know.
Yeah, but nonetheless, the last thought I have on the Bengals Monday Night Football game is this: it feels like the Bengals are in a position right now to where, genuinely speaking, it's a win-win game. You know, if they were to not win this football game, then it's like, okay, you reset. You're supposed to lose at some point. You don't win every single week in the NFL. Right. They've won what seems like the past, obviously it's been like 8 or 9 weeks in a row. I should probably know that, but I don't. At the end of the day, if they were to lose, then you wipe your hands clean and you play again next week for the division, right? And it is what it is. If they win this game, then at that point, God's honest truth, I don't know what the odds are going to be, but you feel like you're Super Bowl favorites. You feel like you're the team in the AFC. Joe Mixon said this just the other day, that they are the big dogs in the AFC. And the fact is the culture in Cincinnati and the culture of the Bengals have changed immensely. And the narrative of the Bengals has changed immensely. The Bengals were the team that you always just expected something was going to go wrong, and now it's to the point where you expect something to go right. You know, every single time I watch the Bengals, towards the second quarter or towards the second half of the second half, so late third, early fourth quarter, you just wait for somebody to make the play. They've done it time and time again. I expect that to happen again tonight, quite honestly. I don't know how they find a way to win, but I think they win this game. And when they do win this game, then again, you go into next week, and we talked about this at length. We won't do it again. But you go into a next week into like a little bit of a catch-22, right? You want to stay healthy. The Ravens and the Steelers are the two teams you don't really want to play when you're trying to stay healthy. I mean, it's going to be
bruise you up a little bit.
It's going to be a dogfight, as they say. And you have to play. At this point, you do. You have to play because you got to fight for the 2 seed, obviously, if you were to win, and the 1 seed. And if you were to lose, you're playing for the division. So no matter what, next week, we talked about this at length outside the office before we came on air. You have to play next week, right, fellas?
Right.
And then tonight, your overall thoughts and just opinions on the game.
One thing that I want to see about the Bengals tonight that they haven't done the past 2 weeks, they didn't do it against the Bucs, obviously, and didn't do it against the Patriots, is play 4 quarters. Play full 4 quarters. That's been the biggest bugaboo, I feel like, for the Bengals all season long is, you know, earlier in the year, they didn't play the first half well. Later in the year, especially in the Bucs game, they didn't play so well, or they didn't play well in the first half. Patriots, they didn't play well in the second half. Play 4 full quarters, and regardless of the outcome, you're going to like the way that you feel coming out of the game.
Anything to add?
I got nothing to add.
In the chat, you guys are talking about scores. As we know,
you going to place all these exact scores?
For my exact or correct score bet on Betfred, 27-24 plus 4,500. I put 25 on it.
Wait, plus 40, probably plus 45,000, right? Plus 4,500.
Plus 4,500.
Yeah, 4,500. Well, that'd be 45,000.
I guess that would Really?
I can
That
read
doesn't seem like
zeros.
that.
It's 4500.
No, that's 4,500.
4,500.
I guess that's I guess that makes sense.
Anyway, Emperor brought up that score. You guys were talking about an old game. Is that what you guys were talking about?
Yeah. I was just trying to clarify to him, like, the playoff game, Bills versus Chiefs, was more explosive, more fun to watch than the game that they played earlier this year. The scores were really similar, but the games are completely different. We all remember the playoff game where it was just explosive towards the end.
Right.
But this year, it was just like really
Let's root for
big.
27-24.
I think the confusion, Casey, was a little bit like this. Not to say that Emperor's right or Emperor's wrong or you're right or wrong. I'll play the middleman here. I think the confusion was that you were saying to a small extent that the game was going to mirror the playoff game last year, which was like 45, 42,
game.
something crazy like that.
42-36.
And you said, let's just set the standard.
The playoff game was 27-24.
No. It was 42-36.
Yeah, that's where you're wrong.
I just looked it up.
Oh, Casey McAllister. All right, this is like Spygate at this point. No, who's on first?
Love it.
Let's just cut to the
regardless.
chase. What do you
Regardless.
think the final score will be tonight? Let's just cut it to that. That'll be an easy thing for you. What do you got?
I'm going to say 28-32.
27-24.
Can we do one thing, Casey? Please.
What?
Oh, I know what's coming here.
Seriously, if you're a sports fan, I'm talking to everybody. If you're a sports fan, all right, and you want,
I really do not care.
And you want respect.
I really do not care.
You have to say the leading score first.
I do not care.
Right?
100% do not care.
32-28, 42-41.
You know why you're confused on
33-18.
It's because you're a soccer fan and they do everything backwards on the scoreboard. They have the home team on the they do it. I used to get emails when I would do the scoreboard wrong. And I put it the same as every other sport, but soccer does it backwards.
I mean, chat. Let's talk about it. Like, put in the chat what your opinion is. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm just gonna go like hell in a handbasket here and be like, this is the world's worst thing. But it's just like somebody that says ideal when they mean idea.
Oh no, throwing your coat.
No.
Oh,
I've heard more people say it. I'm just saying I've heard multiple people say it.
Spur bear.
You're the ones that throw them on the bus now. If you say ideal when you mean idea, those are two different words. If you say 18-38, that just doesn't sound right. It should be like 38-18. The winning score has to go first. It has to. Am I wrong on that? Your guys' thoughts?
No, you are right. Everyone's talking about these high scores though. Is there a scenario that you guys can imagine in which this is a low scoring game?
Yes, absolutely.
Really?
In fact, I almost lean that way just because everybody says it's going to be high scoring.
Like, and what's a low scoring game? Like 21-17 or something like that?
Yeah. Somebody's in the teens. And the winning.
Can you imagine if both teams were in the teens?
Oh, that would suck.
I can't imagine that.
I can't either. But everybody is saying, this is exactly the point that I made on Tom's show. How often, when everybody says something is going to happen, does it actually happen? It's tangential to his system.
That's right. I'm not going to argue with that, Paul.
It doesn't very often.
I'm not going to argue with that, Paul. All right, let's jump into this. I got on here, Michigan got hosed. A little bit of clickbaity kind of titling there. But in all honesty, they were on the wrong end of a call. And you could say whatever you want about that game. There was a million plays to be made. You guys obviously watched the game. Mm-hmm. We all seen the play that I'm talking about. It's the home run pass, whatever pass you want to call it, the touchdown pass that was called back, and they put it back at the 1 yard. When the guy looked like he caught it just shy, but he didn't have control of it. You know, he didn't really have like the ball in his hand yet. By the time he controlled it, he's 100% in the end zone. And I would say this is a thought really quickly. One thing that I think could eliminate all of that is just making it to where you have to get touched to be down in college football. Make it simple, you know? But I digress. That was a touchdown. And you could say that, you know, over the course of a game, things would have been different because the score would have been different. So you can't really play that all out. If the score was the same at the end of the game and you add the touchdown, then obviously they would have won, right? But I don't know if you can do that totally. Your overall thoughts on that call, and then realistically speaking, do you think that you could make the argument that was the difference in the game?
At first I thought that would be the difference in the game. But as the game got higher and higher scoring, it's harder for me to say that just the one touchdown in the first half would have made the difference. Like, if this ends up as a 10-7 game and you can tell that the momentum really swung back one way because of that one touchdown and they never really got their feet back under them, whatever, okay. But when you score 44 points in the third quarter of this game and it's a shootout and you're going back and forth, nobody can get a stop, and you have a chance to win the game at the end, I'm not going to look back at that early touchdown and say that was a reason that you lost.
Yeah, you get buried. It gets buried into the rest of the game. Obviously, if it happens, the score's different, and it is the deciding. But there's so much game that happened after it. It's hard to say that was the defining moment in the game because I don't think it was.
It wasn't like it was 3-0, and then that was the game's only touchdown. It got called back. They fumbled, and then it was a punt fest the rest of the way.
Right. Brandon and Paul, Brandon and Casey, you have anything to add to that? Besides, Casey's struggling a little bit on Monday.
Yeah, I'm
you gonna
really
make it through the game
today.
He's gonna have to go get some water. Brandon, let's start with you. Let's let Casey try to get his pipes underneath him here. What's your overall thought on that situation?
I think it was a touchdown. He didn't have the control of the ball until he was past the goal line, but I don't think it made or make or break the game. But it's definitely a big play that kicked things off. I mean, it was just I was rooting for TCU as someone that wants to see their
leader of men.
Does this work still?
Yeah, yes.
Leader of men.
Oh, baby.
It's my first time pushing the button. That's kind of cool.
There you
go. I wanted to see TCU win, but I love those big plays, and I want the game fairly called. I mean, I don't know how you look at that, and the rest of America saw that it was a touchdown. But I don't think it make or break the game like you guys were saying. It's so early, and it wasn't the only touchdown scored. That game was wild. How many points were scored in, like, the third quarter? It was nuts.
1 billion. Actually, I think it was like 44.
Yeah, it was stupid.
Yeah, and I agree. Like, it should have been a touchdown, but you're on the 1-yard line. Don't fumble the ball. It's that simple. Don't fumble it. Yeah. Don't let that dictate the whole game.
No, you make a great point. The other point I would make is this: if you're a Michigan fan, I'll tell you there's another call that 100%. Now, Thom, I'm going to go back and look at that call. I'm going to go back and look with the Marvin Harrison thing because I don't think that was targeting. I did not want to get into a debate because I do think that there's a situation where, maybe it's been called before. That rule in and of itself is very, very subjective. There's a lot of gray area with targeting. I don't think in college football the fine should be as harsh as it is. I mean, you're making kids sit out a half of football because of targeting. Maybe they are not allowed to come back in that same series, or maybe they have to sit one quarter, but I don't know. I don't even like that. But I'm going to go back to the final play of that Michigan game. That's the definition of the rule. And like it or not, it's 100% targeting. And the truth is that they didn't want to make the call because they knew the outcome of the call could drastically change, quite frankly, the whole entire outcome of the game. When, for all intents and purposes, the play was dead, right? The guy was going down to the ground. It was over. But that's your thing, Reed. You're all over the defensive back, right?
Right. What was he doing? Seriously, the game is literally over if you let him just fall to the ground. And instead, you've got to get your lick in as almost just a way of like, yeah, we just beat you. And then just go in, lower your helmet, and then they reviewed it and it wasn't targeting. It's the letter of the rule. He went down to hit him as he was like I was so mad. I was rooting for Michigan to win this game. And I'm so mad at this TCU player. It would have given Michigan a chance to come back. And I am furious at this TCU player because it's just, what in the hell are you doing at that moment in the game? There's no reason for that.
No, I totally agree. And whether you want to argue about targeting or not, whether you like it or not, I mean, it was the definition of the rule was that
they should throw the flag just for the guy being an idiot. Just like they should just have a 15-yard penalty, just be like, yeah, man, that's just a dumb football play.
What were you doing?
Move it down the field.
Yeah.
To be fair, guys, I don't think that I don't see it the way that you see it, Reed. I don't think that he was maliciously trying to go and like get a lick in or anything like that. I think it was one of those weird plays where he was committing to try to dive or dive down and try to make a tackle, if you will. and it just so happened the guy was kind of falling to the ground at the same time, but it is what it is. You cannot lead with your helmet, crown of your helmet especially, to make a tackle, right? I mean, the truth is that it should have been called targeting. Michigan would have got another opportunity. The one thing that gets missed in all of this that I brought up yesterday at while I was eating some sauerkraut at the family dinner.
Congratulations on not losing a family member.
Thank you. Is this. I thought it should have been called a forward lateral, but it was brought to my attention, and I have not gone back and watched it 100% again. It was brought to my attention that they still had their legal forward pass in the bank, if you will.
It was from behind.
So the ball got fumbled, got scrumbled up at the beginning. Lyman picks it up. He laterals it once. It gets lateraled what I think is one more time maybe or maybe not, but then the ball gets hurled forward. Was that ball caught, though? That's my question. Casey, can you try to – I don't know how you could do it on Twitter. Can you try to dig that final play up again for us?
Yeah, I can send it to you. I can send it to you.
All right. So we'll watch that play here in a minute all together.
I just watched it. It's caught.
The ball is caught in the air.
Yeah.
So it was a legal forward pass then, caught in the air as a pass, and then, quite frankly, the play happened. So the whole entire play was legal until the targeting call.
I'm watching it again, and you're right, watching it. This is the first time I've seen it since the play happened live. And in the moment, it seemed like, like I said, he was trying to get a lick in on a guy that was falling to the floor, just trying to rub it in. It doesn't seem that way, but it is to the letter of the rule targeting. Lowers the crown of his helmet. Lowers the crown of his helmet.
Fired up,
full blown.
Casey.
Yeah, Casey's got it ready to go. Go ahead and put it in the screen there, Casey.
Do we want audio?
No.
Yeah, I haven't scrubbed the audio first.
Yeah, so it gets fumbled, right? And we got a first lateral, and this is our forward pass that's illegal.
Yep.
Ooh. Yeah.
I mean, go back to the hit again.
It might show a replay right here, I'm guessing. Right, Casey? You think?
Yeah, I'm going to turn these.
Oh, no, this just goes back to the
Okay,
start.
it goes back to the start. But
right here.
It is 100% targeting. I'm sure that.
So where would they have gotten the ball at?
Well, they got the ball at the 25, so it's 30. They got the 40-yard line.
40-yard line with 25 seconds to go.
Plenty of time.
And a fresh set of downs.
Now, so we've seen it.
Still probably doesn't score, but
I would say this about it. The chances of them still scoring are probably small, but they get the ball at the 40-yard line with 25 seconds left. It's not a foregone conclusion that they can't score. You know what I'm saying? So it's tough. If you're a Michigan fan, this is tough.
The other thing, too, is you can throw a Hail Mary from the 40-yard line. Like, you can't throw a Hail Mary from back. J.J. McCarthy's not getting it to the end zone there. So you at least give yourself a chance to chuck one up. And
hopefully it bats around.
Maybe something happens, yeah.
The thing that you mentioned, Trace, is that they didn't want to make that call because of it would have been so influential possibly to the end of the game.
100%.
But it's I don't even think it's a questionable call. Like, it's one thing if you're, like, looking at it over and over again, like, I don't know, was this target or not? Every person in America, you show that play to 100 people, you family feud it and survey 100 people, 98 of them are going to go, yeah, that's targeting.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
I think that they missed the call. They missed two. Sure. The video review missed two calls in the Michigan game, right? And that's the difficult part with video review is I don't know if that's led up to one guy. I don't know if it's a multitude of people, a committee that stands over top of these video reviews and how they come to the conclusion that they come to. I don't know for sure. But they have to do a better job. Like if they're gonna take the time to video review these, they can't have, as you said, 98 out of 100 people agreeing with the call and going the opposite direction. Especially, this is my final point on this. Especially when the play on the call on the field was a touchdown to start the game off. The argument that's always made, or the scapegoat, or the curtain that's hid behind with these video reviews is what? As you know, it's the play on the field stands as called because there wasn't clear and conclusive evidence to 100% overturn it. They use that more than I would like to imagine. Because at the end of the day, one thing I would like to have happen with video review is this, especially in baseball, is when you have a bang-bang play or when you have a play in football that's really, really, really close, why does the call on the field, why is that the determining factor? Those guys are watching that in real time with more than likely a bad angle. Now, I get it. There needs to be a call on the field. That's cool. But when you go to video review, it doesn't need to be like, well, we're pretty damn sure this happened, but we can't 100% say it. So we're just going to go with what they said in real time because that makes sense, especially in baseball. Because baseball is one of those sports where you're like, you got some pretty good angles, and you're like, okay, it looks like he beat it, but I don't know. It's pretty close, but you're like, I'm pretty damn sure. And they're just like, you know what? Let's just do it. Let's just do the cop-out thing. Let's just go out there and say the stands. It's too close. Would you put your life on it that you're for sure this happened? No? You wouldn't put your life on it? All right, well then let's just go with the call on the field. That's my main problem with the call. It's not that they called it short of the goal line, because I could see how you might be able to figure that out if the call on the field was that he's down at the 1. But when you say it was a touchdown in real time and you go back and reverse it, that's bonkers. That's absurd. They need to fix that.
Is there anything better? You know, people often make fun of college basketball analysts late in the game, regardless of the score. They say, they don't need a 3 here. They could take a 2 here. Same thing happens anytime that there's a reviewable play. They go like, now you got to remember, they've got to have conclusive evidence to overturn the call on the field. This might be one of those times where you can't fully turn it over, so the call on the field is what's going to stand.
Right.
Every single time. It is awesome. Do you remember 10 years ago, before they announced replay in baseball, and 30 years ago before they announced replay in football, people were arguing whether or not there should be replay in sports? What are we doing?
Okay, hold on, just a second before you
How can
make
we
that
argue
take. Did you guys ever play those MLB video games where you could go in like a slider and you could turn off the ability for the umpires to make the correct call?
Yeah.
And 1 out of every 4 or 5 calls would be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd get into an argument with your best friend about, how do they get this wrong? It's a video game.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be automatic.
Right. You can do that.
I don't know. There's something about a wrong call.
It is asinine to think that you want to get what happened on the field to translate to scores and penalties and everything like that. I think you should be able to review anything. Like, I don't like it when they're like, oh, that's a non-reviewable call. It's like, if replay shows something different than what happened on the field, then do it.
Do you think there should be a time limit? Because I think there should be a time limit.
On what they're reviewing or what?
Yeah, like if they go to a replay review and I'm sitting here for 8 minutes, like because one blade of grass
should be
like kicked up.
Yep.
Absolutely.
No.
Yep.
Give it 45 seconds, whatever it is, 45 seconds a minute. And if you can't figure it out in that amount of time, just go with it.
The sport that needs that the most is basketball, college basketball especially. There needs to be a time limit on how long it is. I also would say this. I hate the idea that the referees on the court are the ones that have to go over there and make the decision.
Right.
That is ridiculous.
There should be a group at every game that just
100%
sits up in the booth.
100%. And they should have monitors. It should all be ready to go. Like the idea that the referees, think about how dumb this is. The referees that are calling the game have to walk over. They literally, every single time you'll see it, they'll be like, oh, give me a monitor. I need a monitor. And they're turning a monitor around on the damn desk. And they're trying to look at it. And they're sitting there in the huddle. And they're all looking at it. And they got their little spin dial that they're trying to figure out how to use the damn thing half the time. It is dumb. Put someone there ready to go. As soon as a call happens that's controversial possibly, right? You start reviewing it. And if you can't figure it out in a minute and a half at most, we're off of it. The call stands, if you will. Because the mojo of these games gets changed. I mean, it's just like basketball is one of the specific sports, in my opinion, where it genuinely can
big
affect
momentum
the
game,
game.
right? It's
pacing
is
pacing is so
well, and that's
important.
the other thing that college basketball needs to change, and we can talk more about college basketball in a minute because we still have Ryan Day to talk about. But college basketball needs to figure out that when they're doing a replay review like this, because a lot of times the coaches, you can't challenge a play in college basketball, but the coaches can ask, hey, go replay, and usually the referees will grant you that, and they'll go check it out. Don't let the teams go back to their benches. The teams
Agreed.
need to stay on the opposite side of half court because that, 1, slows the game down, 2, gives the coach an extra timeout, and 3, gives the players a rest.
Yep.
Keep the teams on the opposite side of midcourt, and I think that, not much, but maybe 10% of the replays will get eliminated just because the coaches ask for them.
Right.
I agree. The thing that's the worst with this is this, and we'll talk about Ryan Day right after this point, is in college basketball with the review process is this. There's a team that has no timeouts. There's 5 seconds left. They review whether or not it tipped off a guy's hand because they're not 100% sure, but they're pretty damn sure, right? Like, it's not really a close call, but they're like, you know what? It's that we need to get this right. So they go to the monitor. What everybody thought turns out to be true. The play stands as called. But the coach just got to stand there for 45 seconds to a minute and a half and talk to his guys when he didn't have a timeout because he burned them already. Mm-hmm. That's not right. Fix it. All right, Ryan Day, really quickly. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on Ohio State because the last thing that I would want to do is listen to a Georgia fan talk if I'm an Ohio State fan. But I'm just going to say this. Listen.
Condescending.
I'm being serious. I didn't say a damn word to any of my Ohio State fans because that was one of the worst losses I'm sure that they've ever experienced, because as a fan, just in general, watching that game with my heart completely in it was just gut-wrenching. But Ryan Day, we sat up here and said for weeks that if Ryan Day doesn't win a national championship, he's in some deep shit. And it turns out that wasn't true at all, because he went out and he showed that he is a great coach. And you could sit there and you can argue about the decisions he made towards the end of the game, and we could talk about that briefly, about the run call, obviously, when they were trying to get a little bit closer for a field goal at the end. But outside of that, it was perfection. The guy didn't play, but the guy made incredible calls time and time again. C.J. Stroud went out and had the best game that he's ever had at Ohio State. He ran when everybody said he didn't want to run. He was that dude. And to be honest with you, I, for the longest time, watched C.J. Stroud from afar a little bit, and I had takes where I didn't think he was that good. I do still think that he plays in a program that is incredibly talented. He has wide receivers that are immensely better than any DBs or anybody that the opposition can guard. So there is a little bit of a help for that. But I would say, as much as I admire Bryce Young, I have decided to admire C.J. Stroud as much, because there's not many quarterbacks that can take criticism the way in which C.J. Stroud took and decide to answer the bell the way that he did. I mean, it's one thing to go out and play well. It's another thing to go out and, quite frankly, put the team on your back and play the best game you've ever had in the uniform. And that's what C.J. Stroud did. And Ryan Day found a way to, quite frankly, stay off the hot seat. And he's got to beat Michigan next year, obviously, to keep that seat from getting really hot. But the beautiful thing is that Ohio State is in a position right now to where they went out on a national stage and proved to the world that they're still a program that is elite, and they're not really falling behind, if you will, right? If Georgia were to go out there and just dominate Ohio State, the narrative would have not been, oh, Ohio State is in a position where they can bounce back. The narrative would have been, they are in trouble. Ryan Day has lost the ship, right? It is sinking, and it's sinking fast. And that affects recruiting. So not to overplay this, not that you want the moral victory, not that you want to sit here and you want to think that, you know, everything is all and well and good, because you obviously had hoped to play for a national championship. But if you're an Ohio State fan, you have to be pretty damn pleased with the fact that things are on the up still, right? Or at least they've been maintained. Because there was a small chance, not a great chance, but a small chance that things go south against Georgia, and the narrative would have been terrible. Especially with the outlook that obviously Michigan could have been playing for a national championship, which is your arch rival. One would say that shouldn't matter, but it definitely would have mattered. So the idea that Michigan lost and you played in a nail-biter of a game, an all-time classic, you know, I know people don't want to believe in moral victories. I believe in moral victories. That was a moral victory for Ohio State. Like it or not, they staved off what could have been disaster for that program. And they played well. And I would say, you could say they deserved to win, right? As an Ohio State fan, you 100% feel like you deserve to win that game. The only thing I'll say on the opposite side as a Georgia fan is this. You know, it's easy to look back and say, you know, we dominate. I don't know if Ohio State fans aren't saying they dominated the game, but Ohio State fans say, listen, Georgia missed 2 field goals. They didn't hand the ball off up the middle on a read option play. That was a touchdown at the beginning of the game, right? They punched the ball out of Marvin Harrison Jr.'s hands, and the ball just, you know, luckily I won't say luckily, but the ball bounces out of bounds, right? There's a lot of plays in that game. You guys had a false start, right, at midfield on a 3rd and 1 that didn't get called, and you go down and you score a touchdown. So there's a lot of things that go into a game that make it the outcome that it is. I would just say, I don't know if it was one of those situations where, you know, you feel like 100% you dominated the game and you should have won, but you 100% belonged on the stage, and you 100% proved that you have just as good of players as anyone in the country, because neck for neck, and then let's see what your guys' opinion on it are. Neck for neck, they played just as well as Georgia did, and Georgia has the best team in the country. So I'll be honest, Ohio State, in my opinion, is the second best team in the country. It was an absolute fluke that they got beat by Michigan. So I digress. Thoughts on the overall situation at Ohio State, what your opinion was, et cetera, et cetera.
Calling the Michigan-Ohio State game a fluke seems to be a massive oversight there. And I don't think you're going to be calming any Ohio State fans by giving them moral victories after this one. It's a heck of a spin zone you put up there as a Georgia fan, but I don't think any Ohio State fans feel any better about that game. Yeah, Ryan Day gets to keep his job for at least one more year, but they played well, should have won. I mean, they had a winning probability of 96% with 8 minutes to go. 96%, and they blew that lead. So I don't think anyone's
tough.
I don't think anybody from Columbus feels
Real
too
tough.
good after that.
I'm not going to. Nobody wants to hear what I have to say.
All right. You guys got anything to add over there?
Well, I was happy to see OSU lose. And that you hit. I was happy for you. I won't lie. I was happy for you. You called it. I mean, I kind of agree with you. Like, OSU, I think, out of the 10 times they played Michigan, they probably should have won 8 or 9 of the times.
Were we watching different games?
Yeah, we were. You want to talk about that for a second? I mean, I'd say, you got anything to add to that?
No, you guys can go back.
Well, listen, it was not – I'll just say this. When Ohio State played Michigan, they were not playing at their best. Simple as that. They had a lot of mental errors, but OSU didn't have a lot of errors in this Georgia game, in my opinion. I thought they played up to the standard that they should have. I think maybe they came into this Michigan game thinking, oh, we're not going to lose this year. We lost last year. That was a fluke. I don't know. That's just my opinion on it.
There was a mental block by Ohio State that entire Michigan game. Michigan was in their head.
That's it.
At home.
That's my point. Okay.
Yeah, they can't win if you can't get out of your own damn head.
No, listen. Ohio State is the better football team out
Correct.
of the two. It's that simple. No one's arguing that. Okay, fair. If that was what we're arguing, then there isn't an argument. All I'm trying to say is that Ohio State plays Michigan. They're going to win way more times than they lose. What happened in that game was relatively, and then you're going to hate me here saying this, it was relatively fluky. And what I mean by that is this. Did it happen? Yes. Can you take it away from Michigan? No. Congratulations to them. Give them their flowers. They deserve to win, right? But what I will say is that you can't rely on all the things that happened in the Michigan game to consistently win a big football game. Ohio State gave up some busted plays on coverages when they were trying to be too cute. They gave way too much respect to Michigan's running game. Way too much respect, okay? And at the end of the day, Ohio State's offense basically is the one that dropped the ball because they didn't try to threaten Michigan vertically as much as they should have. And we're not going to talk about this game at length because who gives a damn? The game already happened. But I'm not going to sit here and listen to the idea that Ohio State's in a position where they're the inferior program now because Michigan's in their head. We'll see what happens next year. Ohio State's losing a lot of players. Michigan's bringing some guys back. I think Michigan's in a position where they've never been before, where they're relatively equals for the first time in a long time. But I am going to say that if you're going to make me rank the college football teams this year, Ohio State is number 2, and I don't give a damn what happened in the Michigan-Ohio State game to make me think differently.
I'm not disagreeing that Ohio State's a better team than Michigan, but to call the Michigan-Ohio State game fluky is an egregious overstatement. This is Ohio State's second half possessions. Punt, field goal, interception into the ball game. They didn't move the ball at all. Don't call that a fluke. It happened over a month ago, and I'm sitting here arguing about it because you had to call it a damn fluke. It wasn't a fluke. And move on.
All right, I'm not gonna sit here and be a stan and argue about it because you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, you play the games for a reason. It's not to sit here and be subjective and say, well, I mean, if this happened and this happened. Marvin Harrison Jr. got hurt or had a concussion protocol, obviously, after that hit. I'm not going to sit here and lie. I mean, the truth is that does Ohio State win that game with him in there for the whole fourth quarter? Probably, right? But that's just not how this goes, and unfortunately, that's the stuff that happens.
Yeah.
But jumping down here really fast, let's do the NFL because the NFL does just now start. For those that are paying attention, we've talked about this at length. It feels as if the NFL's heating up, similar to this office. I don't know what the temperature is in here, but it's rising, and it's rising fast. But as far as the NFL goes, it feels as if now is why you've watched all year long. And it's not just like some people be like, oh, it's the AFC and the NFC championships are the most exciting time in the Super Bowl. I don't think so. Like, I genuinely think that this next week is the most exciting week in the NFL season completely. And then the second most exciting week is the week then and thereafter because there's so many scenarios. Agree?
Well,
disagree?
there's 3 seasons in the NFL, really. There's the NFL season leading up to Thanksgiving. So you get your wins in early on, you get ready, and then you got to make the stretch from Thanksgiving to the end of the season, play right, get right before the playoffs, and then, of course, the postseason. And, yeah, they get better as they escalate, as does everything, right? It gets more exciting as you get closer to the postseason and get closer to the postseason. And I stood on this show on Off the Bench, filling in for you, Paul, and I said, man, this Monday Night Football game, I don't see why everyone's calling it the biggest game in Bengals history. Now we're on the day of the game, and man,
it feels
my
like
heart's racing already. We are 8 hours away from the game starting. My heart's already racing thinking about Joe Burrow versus Josh Allen for a chance to be the 2 seed and possibly the 1 seed.
I'm one of those weird sports fans when there's big games for my team the next day. I can't sleep because I feel like I'm playing in the game.
Right, too excited.
I got 3.5 hours of sleep. But this mustache is ready to ride it all the way to the Super Bowl.
Are you kind of hoping that the Bengals lose?
No.
I want to shave that mustache.
I kind of want to get rid of the mustache, but I can't do it until.
Don't worry, jinxes don't exist. You can. Who cares?
Jinxes don't exist. Didn't we have this debate yesterday? What was the?
Hold on. Jinxes do exist. Hang on. You be the deciding factor. Do jinxes exist? Me and Trace believe they do. Those two don't.
Well, jinxes. Did we decide jinxes and curses are the same thing or no? Because I believe
anything you're doing that's superstitious.
Anything that a fan thinks matters to the product on the field.
Right.
Yeah. They exist. Curses exist. Jinxes exist. Yes, they exist.
No.
It's been determined.
Wrong.
3-2 vote.
Don't trick your mind into
chat. Make a poll.
Don't trick your mind into thinking that you're doing anything that changes the game. Just watch the game. Be a fan. Yeah.
Well, we're going to put a poll out there. We'll let the chat decide whether or not
this mustache definitely has an impact on tonight's game.
See, that's where you're taking it too far.
That's the premise of the argument.
That's the jinx, right?
No, it's not.
He's doing something that affects the game.
No. Jinxes to me, superstitions and jinxes are almost a little bit different, right? Like you got to wear this shirt is different to me than to go out and be texting all your buddies that you've won the game when it's the second or third quarter.
It's the same thing.
No, I don't think so. I think that there's levels to this, which was a little bit wild. I could even take this one step farther and say that this is an absurd take I'm about to have, but it's one to give it some thought. Let's just say hypothetically that you're living in a matrix. Let's just say hypothetically that there are superior things outside of the realm of our understanding. And let's just say that there's a fan base that if there's enough people, right?
Yeah.
That start to want to be braggadocious, that there isn't just one person that sits on the outside and laughs and just let's give these people some humble pie. I mean, do you think in Atlanta when they were playing the Patriots, there wasn't a small chance that there was just thousands and millions of people around the world mocking Tom Brady? And someone was just like, watch this shit. Just saying. Give it some thought.
So you're you're either being sacrilegious and saying that there is a being that isn't God doing this, or you're saying that it is God who actively cares about the Cincinnati Bengals or the Buffalo Bills and their fandoms and be like, these Bengals fans getting a little too cocky. Let's just knock them down a peg real quick. I don't believe that. I don't believe that there is a higher being that cares at all about
Did you just say you don't believe in a higher being?
No, I believe in a higher being.
All right.
My in-laws might be watching. I believe in a higher being.
MK wants to talk about the Muskies instead of the Matrix.
Okay.
What about the Muskies, Paulie?
But before we get into the Muskies, as loyal viewers of this show know, we've been talking a lot of sports today, so I just got to bring this up to you guys. As loyal viewers of this show know, and as you guys know firsthand, my vehicle has had its fair share of struggles. My vehicle, affectionately known as Jackie. So I'll list off some of the problems with my car. The windshield's cracked. Cruise control's broken. The backup camera doesn't work. The locks don't really work. The cameras roll down or the windows roll down whenever they want to. The gas mileage isn't great. I've had 3 flat tires in the last 18 months, which I guess could be my fault. But I have a new addition to the list that has happened in the last 48 hours.
Oh,
Go.
no.
The right rear blinker is broken. So if I want to be in the left lane and get over into the right lane, you just got to hope that there's no cars there. And I got to get that.
Oh, the hand signal, right? You just do this.
Yeah, the bike signals. That's what well, no, see, the left rear blinker was out a year or two ago, and I did the bike signals out the driver's window. Can't do that if I can't lean across the car. So
we've got a good relationship.
You put it up like this, don't you?
Out the sunroof, I could do that.
No. This means you're turning right.
Yeah, but how do
this means left.
I understand, Brandon, but how do I get across the car to do that?
No, he's saying you do that out the window.
You do that out the window.
I see what you're saying.
Out your driver window.
I see what you're saying. Yes, what were you saying?
I was just gonna say we have some good relationships with some car dealerships around here, Paul. We might need to go around.
Paul, what can the chat
take
help
some
me
money
out?
out at the bank and just start paying it off.
How much is a I know leases aren't theoretically like the most financially most prudent, smart thing to do, possibly, but like, what does it take to get Paul into a new vehicle?
So here's the thing.
A lease is the same thing as getting a car.
None of what I listed actually affects the run of the car. Like, I'm gonna get the blinker fixed because you have to have a working blinker. The windshield, it's a crack that goes. It doesn't impede my visibility.
We're just telling you, it might be time. All right, listen.
190,
I stood right here.
196,000 miles.
You guys were gone before the days of the Mustang. That Mustang had just as many problems as you listed, and I kept saying, I don't know, it still runs. And then eventually you just had to eat it and just go, all right, it's time to go get it.
I'm getting the blinker fixed because it's a cheap fix. I've done it before. It's a cheap fix. I didn't have time yesterday to do it. I'm getting it fixed. I'm just saying, she knows. She knows.
It's time.
All right.
It's time.
Muskies. You were there, Reed.
I was there, which, by the way, Casey, I just sent you a DM. We gotta throw that up. There's 2 things that led to this Muskies win. One's Jerome Hunter, and 2 is the in-arena host, Paul Fritchner.
What a cannon. What a cannon.
Did we see – can we get that clip up there? The form, the crow hop, all 9 yards. I mean, he fully reaches down to almost touch the floor with them.
You got to get some speed on that. As you know.
Gosh.
I'm just warming up for the hamburglers.
The Hamiltucky hamburgers.
Yeah. That's all I'm doing. Look at this. Pull it up here, Casey.
Look at this form.
Back.
Gets it to the second row. I didn't believe that he could. Didn't believe it. Ooh. Casey's fighting for his life.
Yeah.
Casey is struggling.
Look at this form.
There we go.
Did you
get that up there?
That ball's ripped, by the way.
Did you see the form? How low he got his arm?
Let this run again. Just let it.
No, wait, hold on.
Let
he
it
hit that
around.
ball perfectly. Look at this. He hides it perfectly behind his body.
Tim Lincecum,
you ain't
baby.
seeing it? Oh, my God. It almost touches the ground. Oh, baby. He said he was going to get one up to me.
I couldn't.
Wasn't quite.
There used to be a cheerleader that could get it up there. I can't. I can't even touch that.
Cannon.
Great game.
Great game. Jerome Hunter, finally. After being in a poor role last year, got it going this year. Good role. I mean, great win, sold out crowds, great environment, and this was a game for Xavier that you felt like if they're going to make a statement this year, if they're going to win. Sean talked about it after the game that he felt like they couldn't win the close game against Indiana or against Duke or Gonzaga.
Yep.
Right? That the team wasn't at that point yet, that they hadn't grown together, that they didn't know the system, that they hadn't meshed to the point that they had now, where You've played Seton Hall. You played in a one-possession game against Seton Hall. You played a close game against St. John's. It was a whole lot closer than it should have been at the end, but just it's a road game in the Big East. Things happen. And now all of a sudden you play a game against UConn, the number 2 team in the country, where you're tied at 71 with just under 4 minutes to go, and you go on a 12-2 run to end the game. Those are the differences that you see in this Xavier team now as opposed to maybe a month ago, and they win the game. It was a hell of a game.
Yeah, closing it out, right? That's what every team needs to be able to do is close it out. They didn't do it in those big games that you played and you mentioned earlier. They didn't do it against St. John's. Didn't do it really against UC. They won those 2 games, but they didn't close out at the end. And to see them finally, the final 4 minutes, play and just close it out.
Yeah, it was. No, it was a really, really good win. And, I mean, credit to Jack Nungy. He was asleep 30 minutes before the game. They said he didn't have a fever, so he was cleared to play. I think he got an IV at halftime because he came out of the half and he had a bandage on his arm, so I'm assuming he got an IV at halftime. I don't know how he played.
So we show up at Centos Center. We go up. There's a place called the Norwood Cafe in the top of the arena. They sell really cheap beer, so that's where my dad likes to watch the games from. And we see Lizzie. We see Paul's girlfriend, and she looks at us. And I've never watched a Xavier game with her before. She is just nervous as all get out. I mean, before the game even starts, she just looks like just so nervous, the butterflies, the whole 9 yards. And she looks at us and goes, Jack Nungy isn't playing. Jack's not playing. I go, what? Jack's not playing. Paul was giving her insider information. And then all of a sudden they announced the starters.
Yeah, so
and Nungy comes on out.
Before the game, he wasn't out at warm-ups, and so we're all talking, is he going to play? Is he going to play? What's going to happen? And nobody was sure with about 5 minutes to go before the game. Nobody really knew what was going to happen. And all of a sudden, it pops up on the screen that he's in the starting lineup, and you're thinking, okay, well, is he just going to be in the start? Is he going to try and maybe play the first 4-minute war and, like, he throws up on the court and he's got to leave? Or what? And he gives you 24 minutes. And, yeah, Adama Sanogo had 18 points, but Sanogo never really got to where he never really did what he wanted to do in this game. And Donovan Clingan only had 4 points. You got exactly what you needed out of Jack, given the fact that he was barely able to even be out there on the court. He went back into the locker room with like 3 minutes left in the half, and like I said, I think got an IV and maybe threw up at halftime too. So
yeah, the final thing we'll say, Sean Miller did say he was sleeping 20 minutes before the game.
Crazy.
So he was literally sleeping in the locker room.
Crazy.
They don't bark anymore, do they?
The kills, no, they don't.
Okay, that's gone.
That's gone.
That was cool.
I mean, the bench still does, but that's how it always was. And then they tried to popularize it in the crowd, and then
the student section did it.
The student section did do it for a little bit. Trace, any thoughts
on barking at a basketball game?
My thoughts are relatively straightforward. I think college basketball is an incredible product. Most people aren't going to pay attention to it till February.
After the Super Bowl, that's what.
Yeah, when the Super Bowl's over, then you'll turn your attention to March, and March Madness becomes electric. But I did watch Xavier when they played out in Portland. I sent a text to you guys. I said, I don't know what you're talking about, but Xavier looks like a Final Four team the first 3 or 4 minutes I watched it. It's similar to the Bengals. I'm going to do some ridiculous comparison really fast. Do you want your team, when they play at their best, to be just as good as anybody and be inconsistent? Obviously, we'd all like them to play at their best all the time, right? And be basically unbeatable all the time, which is impossible. We all know that. But I would prefer to have a team like the Bengals than a team like the Chiefs. Now, you're going to laugh at me, right? And that's how I feel about this Muskies team at times. Xavier, for short periods of time, in every single game that I've watched them play in, look like a team that can play in the Final Four. Then they go on stretches where you're wondering what exactly is going on. But at least you have the capability of playing at an incredibly high level. And what that allows you to do, allows you to go out and beat a team like UConn, who arguably can win a national championship. Inarguably can win a national championship. Certainly might be a favorite to make the Final Four. You could beat them by 10 on your home floor. Xavier has a team that can do that. They have a couple guys in Boom, who is a credible point guard. Like I like him a lot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you got a guy like Nungy, who, for my money, is a perfect big man who can play inside, can guard a little bit, but then can step outside and hit shots. The only problem is that you have for this Xavier basketball team, in my opinion, from an outsider perspective, is this. You have streaky players outside of those two, right? And I might be missing some guys, but there's times where Fremantle looks lost, and there's time where he looks like he's a great player. There's times where Kunkel looks lost, and there's times where Kunkel plays really, really well. And I would rather have a team like that than a team that is similar to, again, I guess the Chiefs are a terrible example. I'm just jumping all over the board here. But, like, as a Bengals fan, you should be thrilled to death that when you play at your best, no one can beat you. No one can beat you. And the Bills feel that way, too, a little bit. And that's why tonight, Monday Night Football can be electric. It could be electric because you have two teams that if they play at their best, there's no one, hardly anyone that can beat them. So if these two teams find a way to play at their best tonight, it's going to be fireworks. So the last thing I want to talk about is this. Do you remember COVID? I mean, do you remember when we had no sports at all? Literally none. We're just sitting around trying to find out exactly what the hell was going to happen next. This past weekend, I did not take for granted. Seriously, Saturday was like basically a kid in a candy store for me. There was incredible college basketball games. The college football playoff lived up to its hype, right? Then you turn the page, and then Sunday you have a full slate of NFL games. And then to cap it off, if you will, you have Monday Night Football here to end out the week of sports. And I would just say this. If you're a Bengals fan, I've said it time and time again, enjoy it. Enjoy it. I mean, you don't know how long you're going to have it. You don't know how long this run's going to happen. But I will say, and I mean this sincerely, Cincinnati is on the edge of the possibility of being a town in 1 to 2 years. 2 years certainly is probably the right term, to where you have a ton of teams in this town that are playing for championships.
Baseball,
right?
including the Reds.
I would include the Reds. I know that people laugh, but I'll say this. That's fair. I'll say this. You'd have laughed at me 3 or 4 years ago if I told you the Bengals were going to be one of the best teams in the NFL. Period. You got something to say about that?
Always believed in Joe Burrow.
You didn't know you were going to get Joe Burrow 4 years ago.
Oh, dude, I remember watching him in the college football semifinal. And they're beating the brakes off of, I don't even know who they played in the semifinal. But
Get him out.
They're beating the
game.
brakes off him, and he comes out for the second half. I'm like, what are we doing? That's our guy.
Oklahoma. He had 8 touchdowns.
Yeah, against Oklahoma, you're just like, get him off the field. That's Bengals property right now. That is our property. Get him off. So yeah, always believed. No faith in the Reds.
I have all the faith in the world in the Reds, to be quite frank, because it can't get much worse.
You need it.
No, I don't need it. It can't get much worse. Like, how much worse can it get? Yeah, I'm damn sure of it.
It can't get worse. That is true.
I'm damn sure. It can't get any worse.
At least you're not the Pirates. I'm such a dick when it comes to the Reds.
No, the beautiful thing about Reed is this. The beautiful thing about Reed is this, is that he's a Cubs fan, which makes him feel as if he's done and won something relatively of recent, and he has. They won a World Series
3 straight
in our lifetimes. And they went to 3 straight NLCSs, and he can have his flowers for that as well. But the crazy thing is this, is that at the end of the day, they're in the same spot as we are. They got a terrible roster, and they're probably going to win 70-something games.
They got Tucker Barnhart.
Yeah, exactly. They're getting washed-up Reds players as we speak, thinking that's going to do something. But at least we know we got some hopeful young bucks coming down the pike. We're not going to turn this into a Red show because who gives a damn about the Reds right now, because the Bengals are playing on Monday Night Football. But I'm just saying, to finish my point, I do think Cincinnati sports is in the prelude to a lot of special things going on, because there's more than anything, there's elite coaches at the college level. Hopefully Satterfield can figure it out. That's my only, I don't know about that. We'll see. But I do think that the 2 programs in college basketball are going to be pretty damn good come relatively soon. Largely because Cincinnati fans right now are frustrated. I get it. But they're going to play in the best basketball conference in the entire country. It's going to be hard not to be good.
Trace, do you realize that right now in the Big 12, the lowest ranked team,
45,
Kansas State, 45. I mean, they're not. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. But there is a realistic world where all 10 Big 12 teams get in the NCAA tournament. That's not going to happen. But, like, you could make an argument that the entire conference should be in. That's wild.
It is wild.
MLB Farm System rankings: Reds 4, Cubs 5. Just saying. Don't act like we don't have a future too.
Man,
we just don't rely our whole identity on the back of Hunter Green and poor Ellie De La Cruz.
But the beautiful thing, Rated, is they get to play the games, and I look forward.
18.
I look forward to 2024 and 2025 with you. I look forward to it. It's going to be insufferable, just so you know, if the Reds get back on top for you. Insufferable. Insufferable. He's going to quit at Chatterbox Sports if the Reds become good. That's how bad it's going to be. Every day I'm going to come in. I'm going to say, how's that farm system look, Reader? How's that big old money bag you got up there in Chicago? Can't even win in a big market. Haven't been good for how long? Traded away. Hell, they traded away our main man out of Middletown. The pride of Middletown.
Didn't trade him.
It's a real man.
My bad. That's
didn't
right.
sign him.
Got rid of him. Just told him he didn't. He said he wanted to come back and be a Cub. He's like, nah, we don't want you back. $4 million? Nah.
We had to build a sports book.
Get out of here. Get out of here.
How to build a bar.
Get out of here. That man just went on basically to have some of the best years of his career.
Well, he left Wrigley, and it's hard for lefties at Wrigley.
Tough. All right, guys. We're going to take off. We'll have some final thoughts here around the room. But my final thought is simple. We have a wheel of lunch. I want you to put in the chat just a place that we can go get some grub. Okay? That's all.
Who day?
All right.
Yeah.
Who day?
Where are we going?
Throw.
All eight up?
No.
Alexander's.
I'll say this. I'm gonna put a treat in there. I don't know if we should do this. I don't even know if you guys want to do it. I have to go down to Moraline. Well, a couple of us maybe have to go down there in a second to help me put this together, and then you can go home if you want. I don't care what you do. But I will say this. If you put it in the chat right now, put Moraline on there, then we'll pay for the lunch.
Put Moraline on there, baby.
Put it up there.
I have no idea how to spell it. I'm not gonna lie.
Come on, Casey.
Do it very phonetically. Just put more
line
dash
with a
line.
space. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great friends of the show.
They are friends of the show. What else we got?
Taco Bell.
Popeyes. Is there a Popeyes around here?
There's a Jocko's.
I don't know what that is.
Oh, yikes.
There's a Popeyes around here. Burger place. Gotta get a burger.
Culver's.
That's
the default, like, not McDonald's burger place.
Because you don't like Wendy's.
Did you like that Wendy's experience?
No, we're never going back to that Wendy's. Sorry. As much as I love Wendy's, this not
looks like a good list.
Anything
Put
else?
McAllister's on there.
Put McAllister's, then we're good.
Yeah.
Leave Hannah and Gabriel in there.
All right, let's let it rip.
Wait, you really leave Hannah and Gabriel in there?
No.
I'm on tape delay.
Yeah.
Oh, Trace.
It's tough.
First every time, man.
Because I don't know why it is. The wings does sound good too, if we're being honest.
Popeyes.
Ivan.
Those chicken tenders, mashed potatoes, and gravy.
You don't get the sandwich from Popeyes? What are you doing?
No.
And more lines out.
No.
Alexander!
Baby.
Hey, this is a
The
win-win
wheel
no
hates
matter what.
Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Emperor.
Now
I
more
love
lines
Emperor.
out.
Emperor.
Whoa!
Emperor's
Hell on.
from Colorado, okay? The other day he put in the chat, he's like, I don't know where you guys can eat. I said, just pull up Google, type in Hamilton, Ohio, find some places. My man comes in the chat and says, should we say this out loud?
Probably not.
I'll do it. I don't give a damn. My man comes in the chat and says, why don't you do the China in honor of COVID?
All right.
Oh, that's elite.
Oh, 50-50 shot here.
This looks like a nuclear sign.
It does.
Whoa.
Trippy.
More line.
Oh, baby! Get me fired up.
got good food down there. I was just there. Brandon.
Yeah, we had a good time.
Leader of New Year's.
All right.
let's get
Leader
that
of
video.
men.
We will see you bright and early tomorrow, 10 a.m., to talk about the greatest game in NFL history. See you, everybody.
Let's do it.
Boo day.